very much still on the loose. He killed 2 people in this building right behind me and has been on the run since Saturday afternoon. Police now have released new images of this person, the individual they believe to be connected to the shooting. You can see them right here. These are 3 pieces of new video. They're asking for the public's help here in this new video, which is clearer than the images we had seen. Officials are pointing to the fact that this individual they believe is about 5 feet 8 inches tall. They identify him, the FBI is calling him stocky. You can see the jacket there, 2-tone jacket, maybe a little bit of green, and clearly the man is masked. There also appears to be an identifiable gait in the way that he walks. Officials say he should be considered armed and dangerous. They don't know whether he is still in the area. It's been nearly 72 hours now since the shooting. The FBI is offering a $50,000 reward in the case, and they are asking for both help and patience.
It's painstaking work. We are asking the public to be patient as we continue to run down every lead so we can get victims, survivors, and their families, and all of you the answers you deserve.
Eve to me is basically freedom. It's a giant open universe where you can do whatever you want.
All right, this comes after police cleared and released another man who had been described as a person of interest in the case. That was a move that led to concern and confusion on campus and all around the city. With me now is CNN's Lee Waldman, who arrived on scene here Saturday night after the shooting and has been all over the campus and city since. Bring us up to speed on these new developments in the investigation.
Well, John, the images, the videos and pictures that were released at the news conference yesterday, these are significant because you have to remember the 2 videos released prior to that, they were blurry. We didn't see any kind of image of this person's face, but you can see it on the videos on your screen right now. You can see part of this man's face. It's covered by a mask here, but it was a distinctive video release because the AG says this could be the key here in pulling those threads to try and blow this case wide open. We asked him about it last night at this news conference, and he said the next 24 to 36 hours are very key in this investigation. They could blow this whole case wide open. You mentioned that distinctive gait that he has. Well, we're looking at this. We have no idea who this person is, but someone who does know this man, the images of his face that we can see, the walk, they should be able to identify this person. We know they're getting these tips from the community. We saw them out here in this neighborhood surrounding Brown University, K-9 units, the FBI, U.S. Marshals, state and local police. They're knocking on doors, hoping to get some more video so we can really piece all of this together.
And you were at that news conference again yesterday where this new video was released. There seemed to be some frustration. Certainly the press asking, I think, important questions to law enforcement about what's taken so long, why this is coming out in stages, and the police and law enforcement in general may be frustrated and a little tired too.
Absolutely, and the law enforcement were asking these questions, things that we're hearing from the community, asking why we're not seeing more. Is there any more video? And they're telling us this is just a part of the investigation. Give us some time here. Community members also telling us that they're frustrated. They want this manhunt to come to an end, John.
All right, Lee Waldman, again, you've been here for days now. Great work all over this area. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. As we said, there are facing a lot of questions, police and FBI, about how they are handling this after this initial person of interest was cleared and released. Law enforcement had to get back to work. You're seeing what they've been doing here in this neighborhood, going through neighborhoods, going into yards, walking down the streets, knocking on doors. This was yesterday, right? 2 full days after the shooting, which tells you where they are. Listen.
We've known since Saturday that the potential suspect walked down Waterman Street in the first video. Why would you be now looking in the bushes or something on Waterman Street 2 days later after it snowed?
So I just answered John the same question on how investigations, they turn and lead you in a different direction. We might have used all our energies in the first few days to investigate something, and here we are now heading back to that same place to continue to investigate, and that's why you saw that, because the investigations change on a daily basis.
All right, with us now, CNN Senior National Security Analyst Julia Kayan, former Assistant Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security. And one new bit of information, Julia, which really tees up the question about where we are. Late yesterday, law enforcement put out a note for anyone who was in that building, Barris and Hawley, which is the engineering building where the shooting took place, saying, hey, we want to talk to you if we were in that building, which seems like a reasonable request, except that it was 2 full days after the shooting itself. So what does all of this tell you about what's been going on?
I mean, that the person of interest, and I think the FBI sort of saying, we've got our guy, and disclosures by Director Patel, delayed this 18 hours. I mean, I will tell you, I saw pictures of them looking through the snow and everything. It snowed. You and I were standing here in the snow on Sunday. Most evidence is now gone, right? Like, so if he dropped something, if there were fingerprints or whatever, most of it would be gone. So and they admit it, they're delayed about 18 to 24 hours. Also, students are gone. Memories, labs people or traumatized people are all around the country, around the world now who may have been in that building. So it's just going to be harder for them. But that look, they are committed to doing a restart. But this is unfortunate, and the public does not want to see law enforcement agencies sort of throwing each other under the bus.
That said, what we did get was the new video released yesterday. 3 separate pieces of video at this news conference, along with some photos and a $50,000 reward. At first glance, you're like, oh, I can't see his face here, but there are some recognizable things, perhaps, for someone who knows this.
So, and let's combine that with the $50,000 reward, which seems it's money, but it's not like a huge reward. This money and those videos are someone is recognizing him. He has friends, he has colleagues, he has a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. Someone will recognize this, and the $50,000 is essentially, we're going to make this. We need you to come forward. A stranger is not going to recognize him from that. So unlike, say, the United Healthcare manhunt, this is really not a manhunt in that sense. This is a we need someone near him to come forward.
That's what happened in Utah with the Charlie Kirk shooting.
Exactly.
It was people who knew that person, even though they were unrecognizable to most people in the video. I want to ask you a question. Actually, Anderson asked me last night, and it's one that more and more people are asking. Providence is a city of some 200,000 people. Presumably a lot of cameras around. Brown University has a lot of cameras around. How can it be that there aren't more pictures?
I can't answer this. I'm your analyst. I cannot answer this. There's a couple things, Did he know where cameras were on the campus? You just have to ask yourself that, so that he's sort of diverting himself and his position. But they are looking at all cameras now. The city is back open. They're gonna, people who weren't around Saturday and Sunday were back at work yesterday. Maybe they'll find something. The other thing is there's no pictures of him in the room. We generally do get sort of real-time pictures. I think that shows the suddenness of this. He comes from behind, and then everyone is hiding. But it is true, and it may change. Someone has something that they don't know.
Well, I think it'll change going forward in the city and this college for sure. One of the things they say about the building, they're just on a lot of cameras in that building because it's sold. In this neighborhood, which is on campus, but the edge of campus, there are residences all around here, so it's sort of a patchwork. But still, you might expect to see more. Great to see you, Julia. Thank you so much for being here.
Big national story we continue to keep an eye on, and that is the investigation into the shooting at Brown University in the Providence, Rhode Island area. This happened on Saturday. 2 people were killed, 9 others injured, and the shooter is still at large. The investigators thought they had a person of interest. They had them in custody, ended up releasing that person, and the search for the gunman continues. We saw yesterday, if you were with us here on Fox Local, we saw the FBI back out at the scene again yesterday, combing through that crime scene, looking for more evidence. And the way this investigation has played out so far, and some of the other things that have come out from it, there's been some criticism over how this has played out so far. And so joining us to break all of this down and where this case goes from here, one of our law enforcement experts, going to bring in James Copenhaver, former sheriff's detective and investigator. And Jamie, we appreciate you joining us this morning here on Fox 35 News Plus.
Good to be with you, Garrett. Thank you.
James, obviously this is a tragic case, a sad case, what happened at Brown University. But there has been some criticism over how this investigation has played out so far, and I think some surprise that still at this point, this gunman's on the loose.
Yeah, let me preface it with the following. This is not a TV crime show we're watching. It's a real life crime, right? And, you know, you watch that TV show and that case gets solved in under an hour. Given the commercial, about 45 minutes, they solve it and arrest the bad guy. Totally different circumstance here. That being said, Garrett, I'm a little concerned on a couple of fronts. The first is, when were they first in possession of this latest surveillance video that they released yesterday in that late press conference? It's my understanding they had that a few days ago. Keep in mind, this is fresh. It happened Saturday. But, you know, my question is, if they had that video, why was it not released before yesterday? My other complaint or my other concern is I think they're struggling now to even identify a suspect. I hope, and I believe this is what occurred here, they honed in on this person of interest and put all their eggs in one basket. You know, the mayor yesterday said this didn't happen, but I can tell you right now, with the technology that FBI has with the phone data, I'm concerned they honed in on this one guy and said, "Nope, that's our guy, let's go get him."
So a lot to go into there, and I want to start with the release of that video that you talked about, and what goes into that decision. We know sometimes there are times where investigators will withhold some of that stuff to begin with, and then other times they immediately put it out. So just kind of walk us through some of that decision making in an investigation and in a case like this, where they're trying to make that call, whether to put that video out there or whether to hold on to it for a time.
You know, it's easy for Jamie Copenhaver to sit back on his couch and have the luxury of not being in the mix, right? And be critical. But use your common sense. Here's my concern. They had this video. They released an image of a bad guy or a person of interest walking around that corner. We all recall that first video coming out. And then we just kind of never heard anything more about it. Here's my other concern. As they released that, every presser that we saw, and I'm being a little critical on the mayor, granted, the political people need to be on campus and on site and behind the podium, Garrett, but let the police talk. Let the police chief chime in. You know, it was almost like he was giving directions, and I hope, here's my concern. We're going into the night hours on the day of the shooting. You have 400 or so people locked down, and I pray that the mayor wasn't putting pressure on law enforcement to go out and capture this person of interest and take their focus off of what they should have been doing, which is looking for a secondary person.
Yeah, let's talk about that kind of balancing act, because you mentioned that first person of interest that was taken into custody. If they did put all their eggs into that basket, as you said, that would have been a lot of lost time. That this actual gunman, this suspect, had to get away, cover tracks, get rid of evidence, whatever the case may be.
I mean, to give the police credit on this, Garrett, the FBI has an amazing set of software to track cell phone signals. And that's exactly how they track this person of interest. You go collect the data from the cell site, and you see which was the strongest signal that would have been closest to the shooting at the time. And then you focus in on that MC number, right, for the phone. It's an identifier for a cell phone. So that's how that basically was started. But the problem is they released the guy. He wasn't the person they were looking for the shooting day. And, you know, meanwhile, now they're going to have to go back and redo what they originally done. And I promise you, there are analysts that are on the ground and in Quantico that are going back through that cell phone data to try to come up with a second cell phone to put that on another person of interest. So it's just time consuming to do that, right? I do believe FBI will hit a home run. I think they'll find that cell signal if the bad guy had his phone on. That's the $100,000 question.
This is a video of some of the scene out there yesterday where we saw those FBI agents back out there literally combing through the crime scene. You see them with the rakes and, scuffing the snow with their feet, literally just trying to find more evidence. As time has passed, I know the crime scene tape's still up around that. We know it is still, parts of that campus still a crime scene. But as time passes, does it get more difficult to find evidence that might be helpful to them in a case like this?
I mean, they're going back on video. They're trying to pinpoint where the person of interest may have been at where the shooting occurred, right? So you're going to go collect latent prints. You're going to go collect biological data from off of other cell phones from those students, meaning video. Did someone have a video of this person that could lead them to additional evidence? But as far as the evidence collection, you're going to see that probably throughout tomorrow or even the following day. It's such a large crime scene. Campus a couple of times to make sure nothing was missed, such as something that was discarded by the bad guy, something that just doesn't look in place. But more importantly, Garrett, once this person is caught, they have to go and prosecute that case. So they want all the evidence to be jelly up and jam tight, with the words we used to use, basically to collect everything to prosecute the person once he's arrested. It's just a huge endeavor.
We do know, like you said, it's the shooter at this point still unknown. Is that search for evidence different right now when you don't have the suspect identified, as as opposed to if we did know who the suspect was and who they were looking for and had some sort of indication of where this person might be?
Yeah, you're going to have an evidence collection team that's going to be addressing the areas where the shooting occurred.
Clear also, this investigation is not the investigation. It does not belong to the FBI. This investigation is headquartered and headed by the Providence Police. When you see the Chief Perez, he is the lead on this case. The FBI is assisting, and I'm sure the Providence Police are thrilled to have the FBI, but there's a lot of undercurrent here of politics. And what do I mean by that? Well, much of the investigative tools that the Providence Police are using, they're being advised by certain people. And the undercurrent of not releasing things when you need the public's help is absolutely out there. And I think that's disgusting. They need to use the public to catch this guy, right? This is new video of him 2 hours before the shooting. What did we find out about this? Well, we still don't have a picture of his face. What we have found out is he's a fat 5'8" male, approximately, I'd say he's in his 30s, perhaps mid 30s. And he's walking around somewhat aimlessly in the vicinity of the Brown University or on the Brown University campus. They didn't have this the other day, and we can criticize for that. Why did they stop canvassing for video after they had the person of interest? Because even if the person of interest was in fact the shooter, canvassing for more video would help the prosecution of that person. Yet, for some reason, they stopped. Did they not have enough personnel? They have the FBI, they have the state police, they have the campus police. This investigation smells of politics. One of the things I see all the time now is, why are the politicians the lead speakers at these press conferences? Who cares what they're going to say? Let's have the investigators. Let's have the chief of the police and the FBI head, the officer, the agent in charge, talk about the investigation. Let's not exclude the politicians. Let's let them get up there and, get their 1 minute of fame, but let's get them off the air because they're not saying anything that's going to help this investigation. Let's get the police out there. Let's get the FBI. What we want to do is catch the shooter in this case. This area of Rhode Island is terrified right now. This shooter has not been caught. 2 students are dead. 9 have been injured, right? What they have to be asking themselves is, will he come back? Will he strike again? They haven't caught this guy. All they have is this picture of this 5'8" pudgy individual walking around aimlessly. The other thing, I'm going to mention some of the errors that have been made in this investigation. And like a lot of the talking heads on TV, I don't like to criticize fellow police. We are a fraternity, but I will. And I'm not, in essence, criticizing them, but asking questions as to why, right? Right now, it's interesting to know that the FBI has put up a $50,000 reward for the arrest leading to the conviction of this shooter. Will that get people to call? You bet it will. People will talk for a lot less than $50,000, right? The other thing is, when we look at this investigation, from the outset, there was very poor crime scene management. What do I mean by that? They allowed the witnesses to leave. Every single person in that lecture hall should have been interviewed. I don't care if you got to get 50 or 100 detectives to interview each single person, because each person there saw something differently or from their perspective. The other thing I'm baffled by, absolutely baffled by, is why is there not a sketch? Why have they not enlisted a sketch artist to draw this person? They have enough. They have the shape of his head. They have his face from his nose up to his forehead. A sketch artist can draw someone like that. And will it be helpful? If you know this guy and you see his walk, you would absolutely know. And it's referred to as gait, the way someone moves, their body language. And someone that knows him absolutely can say, that's so-and-so. But yet there is no sketch out there. Unprofessional, absolutely unprofessional. And if the Providence police don't believe in doing that, the FBI should push them. The other thing is, the FBI has a behavioral analysis unit. They have enough to do a profile on this shooter. Let's get a behavioral analysis on this guy. It can only help. Are they that busy in Quantico that they can't get a behavioral analyst to draw up an assessment on this shooter? The other thing that's driving me crazy, it's been reported by numerous news outlets, is he yelled something during the shooting. Why has that not been published? Isn't that part of the investigation? Couldn't that help the investigation? Why are they holding it in? I'll tell you why. Politics. And I don't know what he yelled. I have no idea, but that is part of the investigation. Why are they not putting that out there, right? Law enforcement needs to release timely information. Get it out there. As soon as they get it, like as soon as they got this video, and I think now they're starting to get it, they put it out there. And I keep repeating the mantra, if you see something, say something. And going right along with that is, has anyone here that's listening, watching this show, has anyone heard or seen them say, if you want to communicate and if you have information, dial, like in New York City, 1-800-577-TIPS. That's not the number for Providence. I don't know what the number is for Providence. I don't know what the number, the TIPS line is for the shooting at Brown University, because they've never published it. I've never seen it. It should be on the screen as they're giving this press conference. This is Investigation 101, and they're not doing it. So it makes it look like they're amateurs. They got to continuously publish that TIPS line. We need to also, very importantly, we need to take the politics out of this, all right? This is a murder investigation. M-U-R-D-E-R. It's a murder investigation, all right? Stop worrying about Brown's enrollment. Stop worrying about how the community is going to see this. This is a crime. We are looking for a killer, right? So get the politicians off the press conference and let the FBI and the chief of police run the press conference and talk about the investigation. Give the politicians each 1 minute. That's all they need, because what they say is not pertinent to catching this guy. This is why, look, and I will tell you right away, it is possible. Look, we've seen investigations where it takes a while to apprehend the perpetrator. Absolutely. And I'm not criticizing them that they was spoiled in this country, because across this great nation, law enforcement is so good at their job that in these cases, they frequently catch the perpetrator before you wake up in the morning from the night before sleep, the perpetrator is under arrest, right? So that's a lot. That's about what I have. I think I've ranted enough for the beginning of this show. Anyway, folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your service dog. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off the cuff zone, the police off the cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
Joining me today, and I'm thrilled to have him here because I've been going solo a lot of the time during the afternoon, is retired NYPD Sergeant Professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut. Attorney, welcome to the show, Professor Michael Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Bill. Thank you for having me on. Good afternoon.
Now, Mike, I know I ranted for almost 10 minutes, but I think it's important to put a light on some of the things that perhaps are being done wrong, perhaps haven't been done in a timely fashion, because after all, this is a murder investigation. And it's more than that. It's a murder investigation, yet it also is an assault of 9 people. And I'm sure there is some federal charges, but I made a point of saying that this case is not run by the FBI, it's run by the Providence Police. Your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, Bill, as of right now, this is totally a Providence job. It's not a federal job. We don't know what the motive is. If it was some sort of motive, depending on what he said, if we could figure out what he said, we might be able to figure out whether this was some sort of racial or ethnic hatred or religious hatred. We don't know. But right now, this is squarely in the hands of the Rhode Island Police, Providence, Rhode Island Police Department, and the feds. As you've dealt with this many times, they can supply some sort of logistical help and that sort of thing. That's great, and with some manpower. But this is totally a Providence case, and the hard part was the crime scene. The kids, a lot of the kids have gone home. They're not even back in their dorm. They're actually gone home. So it makes it difficult. And as you said it many times, you get one shot at, taking care of that crime scene, examining that crime scene, talking to the witnesses. Because by now, there's no sharing doesn't seem to be any sharing of video from any of the witnesses. Those witnesses, many of them probably were not even debriefed at all. And so the local police have lost a lot of intelligence information on this case.
Mike, you're 100% correct. And the other thing is that he fired over 40 shots.
Yeah.
When you load a semi-automatic, what do you do, Mike? You touch the rounds, don't you?
Right.
To put them into the magazine. Yeah. Could it be possible that his DNA are on those spent shells? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's part of the crime scene. Swab those shells, right? Swab them for DNA. And that also could take time to come back, although law enforcement today, the technology and the forensic is so quick compared to when we were on the job. Something like that when we were on the job would take 3 to 6 months to come back. Now they can get it back in 24 or 48 hours. So there's a potential that DNA could be on the spent shells. So we're waiting for a break. We're waiting for something to happen. Elizabeth, I see you agree with me. At Elizabeth Ellis Coach, politically correct BS. Yes, I agree with you. There is some political bullshit holding back this investigation. And when I see the mayor, the governor, and every other politician doing the lead at these press conferences, I cringe. They have nothing to do with this investigation. Even they have the state attorney general. What is he doing there? Once they get an arrest and he's going to prosecute, all right, put your face, get your 10 minutes of screen time. There's no reason for you to be there right now. This is the investigation by the FBI and by the Providence Police, all right? Not all these politicians up there. This is a Stuart Kaplan on Fox, pretty sharp FBI agent, and they're not all sharp, but this guy is. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Are you as frustrated as I am, Stuart? I am, Jesse, and I think what you're seeing played out is the cascading impact of early mistakes that are now amplified 72 hours later. You know, Jesse, when the shooting stopped and law enforcement arrived on scene, the first thing is obviously to try to figure out who they're looking for, locate, identify, and apprehend or neutralize that person, at the same time trying to triage and give life-saving measures to those that are still alive. It's funny, I guess it's not funny, but it's concerning that did the campus police not segregate or retain those witnesses or keep them isolated? What happened to the eyewitnesses in that classroom? Were they, hunkered down? Were they separated? Were all of the things that should be done to maintain the integrity of a crime scene? And are we seeing those early missteps, or why we are here now, 3 days or almost 72 hours later, with no further along than we were on Saturday at 4 o'clock when the shooting unfolded?
Well, I think we know the answer to that question, and the answer is no, because Brown University just put out on social media, if you were in that classroom, if you were an eyewitness, please come forward and talk to us. And so you could answer. So obviously these people were not quarantined, and they have no idea who the witnesses were and where they are now.
Investigation Mike 101, witnesses need to be interviewed separately.
Mhm.
You can never interview witnesses together because they will influence each other, and they will they'll wind up saying the same exact thing. So if there were 400 people in that lecture hall, interview all 400 of them. And if you need to get 50 or 100 detectives to do that, then do it. Get the state police, get the FBI, wake up everyone from Providence that's at home and get them in to interview these people. That's how important that is. And apparently they didn't do that. And you only get one chance to do things correctly. And once you lose that opportunity, guess where all those kids went the next day? They went home. They went home. You just lost the opportunity, because now once they go home, they're going to be influenced by talking to people and what they saw. And what's really, really baffling, I said this at the outset of this, was why was there and why is there no sketch? That blows me away. And as I said, sketch artists don't have to see the face. They can have this face described to them by eyeball witnesses. I don't know if the shooter, in fact, ever took down the mask. I don't know. But even what they saw, even what we see on the new video put out of the rotund individual who they're saying is possibly the shooter, there's enough there for a good sketch artist to draw a sketch of his face. And there's other angles. And they basically, sketch artists know how to do it. And by talking to witnesses is how they come up with the shape of his face, the shape of his head, the shape of his nose, the shape of his lips, his eyes, all of those things. But they must interview eyeball witnesses. Mike.
Yeah, there's no substitute for it. And as you say, sketch artists, sometimes they get it really close and sometimes they don't. But just looking at a still right there that you showed, I could see that he's about between 30. What I wrote down was he's between 30 and 40. He's 5'8". He's got small feet, and he looks like he's slightly overweight, male white. And so he's probably, I'm thinking, because you could see him wandering around and walking around, he's probably somebody who's local. He's not from California. He's not from Florida. I believe he's probably a local in the Providence area. And I'd like to see some videotape about where he was on campus. Did he have to walk past a security guard to get onto the campus? And when he did, what route did he take? Was it some circuitous route, like he's just minding his own business, walking around looking at the leaves? Or did he make a beeline for a particular building? Because he shot up the one, I believe just one particular building, the engineering and physics, where they're taking their final tests. I want to know that, because that'll tell me a lot about this guy. He doesn't seem to have left campus in a car speeding away, with the wheels screaming. So I think he's pretty close by. You put out a little bit more money. Brown should put out $150,000. They've got 9 students, 2 dead, 9 injured. They have a huge stake in this, and they better get it right. And so if he's a local person, like I believe, I think adding some money to that pot can get a lot of people talking. All you need is one lead.
Mike, you're 100% right. And that's why we know that using the community, the eyes and ears of the community, and the phone calls of the community to a tips line is what's going to solve this case. You think they're putting out these videos for their health? No, because they need help. They don't know who this guy is. And minus some forensic hit like a fingerprint or DNA on the shell casings, they need good video and they need a tip. They need someone to say, that's so-and-so, I know him. The other thing is stop holding back information now, all right? You don't have a perpetrator. You don't have a, stop with the bullshit politics. What did he yell when he was shooting? That will give us an idea.
It's huge.
What was the nature of this? What was the motive to this? But no one knows. What students are saying, he yelled out such and such. I'm not going to even say it till it's verified. But it has been said that he yelled something while he was shooting. What did he yell? Why are they holding that back? Is there a good reason for that, Mike?
Bill, you wonder because we've seen politics, get inside of police cases many times, you even more than me. But you take a look at the Luigi Mangione case. Our mayor, former police captain, was in the entourage escorting him into, Manhattan Central Booking. You're sitting there going, why is there 25 people surrounding one person with a helicopter overhead, and there's the mayor, and he doesn't see a microphone, a podium, that he doesn't like. And you got to stop that. You got to have detectives talking about what they have and what they need. And you got to have that tips line 20, just going along the bottom of the screen constantly. Talk about the reward, up the reward, give the public, because the public is your eyes and ears now. The eyes and ears for the police. The police need public's help. And we saw what the tragic circumstances were, the results were in the Boston Marathon bombing. The FBI was reticent about getting the video out, and it was put out there by a news station, and they tried to stop the Boston police from putting it out there. The result was the local police departments didn't know what these guys looked like, the Tsarnaev brothers, and we see the results of that. One of them, they killed the cop in cold blood like 24 hours later. The politics, my guess is they're not talking about ethnicity, they're not talking about color. It's all, we have a man. Okay, wow, we've identified him as gender. Wow, okay, great. And we need your help. Could you give us a little bit more? Give the public, they're your eyes and ears.
Absolutely. From the chat at KMTX78, they hold it back because they want to be PC and not offend anyone despite what evidence shows. At KMTX78, you're right. We're playing devil's advocate. We know why they're holding it back, and we think it's wrong. I think it's totally wrong. It's really coming out of some political correctness, and it's bullshit. You want to catch this guy so he doesn't kill anyone else? Could he come back to the campus and do it again? God forbid. But yes, he could, right? So stop being politically correct. Let the law enforcement officers handle this investigation. Let's go back to the Stuart Kaplan here on Fox News.
When the police chief comes out and doesn't say anything and changes the story, and the mayor says he's tired, that just drives me crazy. Who are these people running this investigation?
Well, to that point, Jesse, when I see political figures basically taking control and dictating the narrative and almost stifling or suppressing the police chief from giving additional information, and you saw your soundbite where the mayor kind of put his hand on the shoulder of the police chief and kind of told him to stand down, that is very telling to me that I think that politics or the image or the maintaining of the image of Brown University is front and center. This university has a lot to lose. In fact, it has everything on the line right now. And I think that you see these city elected officials trying to preserve and protect the university's image and reputation when you have the president of the university can't even tell you what the class was or how many students were there or what they were actually doing. That's not credible to me, Jesse. Of course that woman knew exactly how many kids were in that class, what the class was designed for, what kind of class was. Look, I know most of the kids in that class were freshmen or sophomores. They were taking some sort of engineering class. I can tell you that the shooter stepped in from the top, walking down into a lector. I mean, I have more information than the president. I mean, that's just impossible. And so when you lose your credibility and quite frankly, the reputation of any law enforcement agency is quickly eroded and we can no longer trust what's coming out of their mouths. The other unfortunate thing, Jesse, quite frankly, is this person of interest that they kept for 24 hours. All of those potential leads are now maybe forever lost because people left Brown. Maybe they went home. Maybe they were on Christmas break. We don't know where those people are. Maybe they now, are no longer interested in providing, credible information. There's a lot of blunder here, and that's what you're seeing played out.
You're exactly right. I think it stems from protecting the university above everything else.
So again, I agree with what they're saying here. And I think we got to put politics aside and we got to capture this guy who shot and killed 2 Brown students and wounded 9. That's the most important thing. Not the future of Brown University, not the future of Providence, Rhode Island, not the future of the state with the governor speaking and the state attorney general. Let's get this guy. Let's get a sketch out there. Let's get the FBI behavioral analysis unit to draw up a profile on this guy. We have enough. We see his gait. We see his size. I thought right there people were saying, oh, what's he doing on campus 2 hours before? And humorously, I said he's probably waiting to have a pizza delivered to that location, judging by the fatness of his belly there, So, but that also tells us something about this guy. He's in his 30s. He's out of shape, right? He looks like a physical mess. Even the way he walks, it looks like something's wrong with his left leg, or his left hip. And so all of that thing is potentially part of who he is. The FBI behavioral analysis can use that in drawing up a profile of this guy, Mike.
Yeah, and you think about it, he gets there 2 hours early, and you can see him on video. Where was the Brown University Police Department, their security force? Where were they? We're supposed to have some security for universities, even ones that pride themselves on being open. You go to Columbia University, and even if you're a uniformed officer, they don't really want you on their campus whatsoever. They don't want you to be seen on their campus. They have what they think is good security. Where were they 2 hours ahead of time? There's a man walking, just wandering around aimlessly. You don't see that too often. You see young people, students and professors. You know what they look like. Who's this guy? Nobody asked him, where are the gates? How did he get onto the property, proper? So much has been lost. All the opportunity to get information on this person. We're hoping that he did not have any sort of gloves on. We're hoping whatever doorknobs he touched, hopefully, I imagine it might be too late to try to get some sort of DNA off of it. But so much was lost in the very beginning of this. And Brown, you're right. They're like Columbia. All they care about is their reputation. And you know what? These Ivy League schools, they have so much money. They're so well known. They don't really they're going to take it on the chin for a while, and maybe deservedly so, in say the Columbia case from 2 years ago or Brown today. They'll recover. Nobody should feel sorry for them. But the fact is, they don't seem to be really too concerned about their student body. And that is really scary and concerning to parents.
Absolutely. From the chat at David Barone 8002, live about 10 minutes away from this area, large police presence, FBI took over the investigation. The FBI is not taking over this investigation. This investigation belongs to the Providence Police. The FBI is assisting And I hope that if that's true, that there's a large police presence 10 minutes away, I hope it has something to do with perhaps apprehending a suspect in this case. But the FBI is not taking over the investigation. That's what's been sold by the media. This investigation is the Providence Police. All murders are local unless there's some huge reason it becomes a federal crime. And other than that, it's always investigated by the local police department that handles the jurisdiction. This clearly, among many other things, is a murder because two Brown students were murdered in this shooting, right? This is from ABC News.
Still on the loose tonight in the deadly mass shooting at Brown University. Just a short time ago, take a look at this. Authorities releasing these new images tonight of a person of interest dressed in black there, walking through a neighborhood, his face covered by a mask. At some points here, his eyes are visible. And what we've now learned about that person of interest who had been in custody. Whit Johnson on the scene in Providence again tonight.
Tonight, the urgent manhunt is back on to find a suspect in the deadly mass shooting at Brown University, still at large after more than 48 hours.
We want to see.
You know, that video of the FBI agents searching basically the escape route of the perpetrator, possibly the route he took to gain access to the lecture hall. It looks like PR to me. They should have been doing that the night of when this occurred and the next day. But now they want to be seen out there searching for evidence, which is great. Yeah, we want, if there is evidence, if he dumped a gun, if he dumped anything, we want to collect it. However, it's a little bit late. It's a little bit late, Mike.
Yeah, as time is everything, you have one opportunity to do it right. And within, 12 hours, you just think about how many people came into that building, left that building. That building was not isolated. And I know, there's an emergency, and, we've seen crime scenes in the Bronx and the streets of Manhattan where people are walking all over the place, but you got to isolate it as good as you can, and then have a coordinated effort. But to sit there and, maybe that video might be 12 hours later. So many people have walked by. You've lost maybe footprints in the snow. You've lost things. Maybe somebody's kicked something like a spent cartridge from a firearm. A lot of things can get lost very quickly. And maybe you're right. Maybe they're trying to just make it look, I hate to say, but make it look good for the public that they're out there. I don't know. I hope not. But they are late to the game in this case.
Absolutely. Back to WABC News.
The individual that pulled the trigger on these young kids identified, apprehended, and brought to justice.
Moments ago, police releasing these new surveillance videos showing a person of interest in dark clothing walking in a residential area hours before the shooting Saturday afternoon, seen crossing the street, and this image showing him from the front.
We're asking the public for assistance to be able to identify this individual.
It follows a stunning turn in the investigation. A man previously detained, released overnight. The Rhode Island Attorney General telling ABC News the man was effectively cleared after analyzing the evidence.
Do you believe people here should feel safe right now?
I do. I understand why there is deep discomfort. However, we have a very safe community with a lot of law enforcement resources at our disposal right now.
The first reports of an active shooter coming just after 4 p.m. Saturday in the midst of final exams.
2 victims, 1 shot in the back, 1 shot in the shoulder.
Students barricading themselves inside classrooms, hiding underneath desks. Law enforcement going room by room.
Providence Police!
Police say the gunman entered the Barris and Holly Engineering Building and opened fire on the first floor. Joseph Fedura was inside a lecture hall leading a study group of about 60 students when he says the shooter walked in, his face almost completely covered, and looked him in the eye.
Boom. That guy is witness number one.
Yeah.
He's the guy I would use to draw the sketch.
Yeah.
Why hasn't he been brought to the sketch artist? Why is there no sketch 3 days after this shooting, right? Why is the sketch disseminated everywhere? Why isn't it used to canvass homes, to canvass ring cameras, to canvass businesses? Why isn't it sent out electronically all over the place? Because they didn't do one. That's why.
That's right, Bill. And you think about it, I hope that when people are watching that interview with the mayor, Mayor Smiley, that they are frightened to death of what he's saying. This guy doesn't know, shit from Shinola, because you should be very concerned that there is a gunman loose in your community, a murderer, cold-blooded murderer that killed 2 people and gunned down 9 others, and probably fired who knows how many rounds, 40, 50 rounds. For him to say, oh, you should, it's okay, we have plenty of resources. Who cares if you have 1 cop or 50 cops? The guy's still out there and you have no clue as to who he is. When they start talking like Mayor Smiley, you got to be concerned, because that is a joke. This guy is a complete joke.
Yeah, something like, as I said, that it becomes political theater rather than what it should be, a huge investigation to find out who killed these kids.
I saw like something bulging from his chest, so maybe like some type of ammo or bulletproof vest.
Oduro guiding students to take cover behind a desk. Police say the gunman fired more than 40 rounds from a 9mm handgun inside that lecture hall before fleeing the scene. 2 students killed, 9 others injured.
What did you see as you were walking out?
I think honestly, it felt like a video game site. Like it was just like something I've never really seen before. Students just agonizing in pain.
Among those killed, Muhammad Aziz Umarzakov from Uzbekistan. His family writing on GoFundMe, he was incredibly kind, funny, and smart. Our family is incredibly devastated by this loss. And Ella Cook, a sophomore from Alabama, remembered as a bright light.
Her loss is really, really a big hit for the Brown community. It's going to be a long period of healing and pain going forward to start next semester.
And again, David, just moments ago, authorities releasing these new surveillance images of a person of interest. They want the public to study them closely. The FBI is now offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction. David.
Another thing, Mike, that I neglected to say earlier was that I think the lead detective on this case should be at every press conference, because the chief of police here, and I'm sure he's very competent, but he's not a good speaker, all right? So maybe you should get the voice or someone who's really a good communicator, because what you're putting out there is so important to an investigation like this. The messaging, that's the word I'm looking for. The messaging is so important. And who knows more about the investigation than the investigators, right? The detectives. We always used to say, and I was a sergeant in the detective bureau, I didn't consider myself as knowledgeable as the detectives who had their fingers on the pulse of the investigation. And when I wanted information, I would go right to them. But always, because of egos, the highest ranking people want to be the voice of the investigation. Step back. Let the or if you want to be on camera, go ahead, but have the investigator tell you what they have, what they think, what the conclusions they've drawn from their investigative steps. Mike.
Yeah, part of this is, as you've talked about it, is the competence of the police, but also trying to get the public to be confident in the competency of the investigation. And so you need a detective, someone who's intimately familiar with what is going on presently, not somebody like Smiley or that other gray-haired gentleman. They're dead bats in the lineup. They're not giving you anything, okay? They're just empty suits, and they're all this spewing nonsensical stuff that has no relevancy whatsoever. You need the public to feel like, yeah, the police got this. Maybe they do, but we don't know. You got to give the public the feeling that you know what you're doing and you're bringing to bear all the resources. And, they have to make up for the mismanagement in the beginning, but they need to have somebody who could speak to the public, speak at those press conferences, one person and one person alone. Don't have 4 people in a series going on and on and on talking. No, get the message out. Let everybody know what let the detectives know what they need from the public. That's the most important thing that they could do. Give the public confidence that this is moving along.
Mike, Mayor Smiley and all the politicians clearly have an agenda, and their agenda is different from the police department's agenda. And they want to be the face of this investigation, yet they should not be. But they will be, because that's who they are. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, like, share, and make lots of comments. If you want to contribute financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel membership. You can become a member of the Police Off the Cuff YouTube family. And now a word from our sponsor. FanDuel's got an offer you don't want to miss this NFL season. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300
more. And we're going to learn more about the 2 victims as part of our team coverage tonight. But first, our NBC 10's Oscar Margain has the very latest from officials who just spoke this last hour. Oscar, what did we learn?
Hey guys, well, this new batch of videos that was shared and images really is meant to try to get the public to share more information. They want new leads in this investigation. They've also upped the presence of police, not just on campus, but throughout the city here, saying that people should have nothing to worry about, trying to reassure everybody here. However, with the gunman still at large, the students we spoke with are starting to question that safety. New surveillance images shared by Providence Police Monday show what they've described as a person of interest in the Brown University shooting.
Every minute counts.
Video shows a person dressed in black and dark green clothing, wearing a face mask and a beanie, walking down several streets near campus.
We're at the 49th hour, and there's no one that wants to put this individual in handcuffs than us.
Students on campus waking up to an increase in police presence, from FBI agents and canine dogs to investigators in hazmat suits searching for evidence in a dumpster.
Everyone now that I know is really just trying to get off campus as fast as they can.
Students like Ethan Mokina questioning safety on campus.
It's crazy that you can walk into a classroom building, open fire, and then walk on out just like casually.
Saturday's shooting happening at the Barris and Holly building, where students were testing.
Wow.
All in all, 11 students shot, 2 of them killed. Now identified as Ella Cook and Mohammed Umartakov. The following morning, police detained a 24-year-old person of interest at this hotel in the town of Coventry, only to be the wrong guy.
We will be releasing the person of interest who had been detained.
Now I have to tell myself they'll never be me again. And now my school and my community is broken.
Mia Tretta is reliving a childhood trauma. She was shot by a gunman at her high school in California 6 years ago.
In a matter of 8 seconds, my life was changed forever.
Despite Saturday's shooting, she believes Brown University does a good job at making her feel safe. But while some point to potential issues,
there just weren't a lot of cameras in that Brown building.
Mia believes safety is on legislators.
It doesn't really matter how safe a city or a suburb or a college town is if people who want to do bad things have access to firearms.
Now, as you guys mentioned earlier in the show, the FBI is offering a reward of $50,000 for any information that leads to the capture of the gunman. Now, you have a phone number there on your screen. They're asking for you to call with any information to 401-272-3121.
That is the first time during this entire investigation that I have seen the tip line. 401-272-3121. Am I imagining things, Mike, or is this the first time you've ever seen that tip? The tip line?
This is the first time too. I've not seen it before.
It's absolutely crazy. But so now maybe they're starting to get their ducks in a row, as they say.
Reporting live in Providence, Oscar Margain, NBC 10 Boston.
Oscar, thank you. Let's turn now to NBC 10's Mary Marcos to hear from those who knew the 2 students who were killed in the shooting. Mary, what are those young people saying to you?
Well, Colton, they are saying it's really hard to describe this grief. They say Mohammed was an incredibly supportive friend with a bright future ahead of him. All of that was taken away when the gunman opened fire and escaped down the street.
He dreamed of becoming a neurosurgeon. Instead, his life ended in a class he wasn't a part of.
Mohammed wasn't even supposed to be in the classroom.
Before the shooting, the freshman from Virginia was just looking forward to winter break.
He was excited to go back home and see his sister
Joseph McGonigal got brunch with Muhammad at the dining hall when they ran into two friends headed to an economics review session.
If you're going to a class or something, he would just tag along just to keep you company. That's apparently what he did with that review session. He texted me a picture of the lecture and he said, guys, look, I got dragged into the econ session.
Less than an hour later, gunfire erupted at the engineering and physics building.
The timestamp, I've looked at it like 100 times, is at 2:57. Some of us saw the people running out of the building from the 12th floor because you can see down.
Muhammad and sophomore Ella Cook were killed. 9 others were hurt. Kamal Naqvi was one of the first to see the aftermath.
There were, I believe, 2 people there. One person was shot on the shoulder. The other was shot in the abdomen or stomach.
It is truly devastating that someone this young with so much potential, who was so loved by the community, could be killed in the way that he was.
Now, instead of taking their finals, students at Brown are grieving 2 lives cut short.
It will keep happening unless stricter gun control laws are introduced, unless we can limit people's access to firearms so that students don't have to worry about having finals week be their final week.
The city is making mental health resources available to the community, but the students we talked to say most of their peers are either heading home or they've already left. Live in Providence, Mary Marcos, NBC 10 Boston.
So, you sometimes lose sight of the fact, the human element here, Mike, and that there's 9 victims, 2 dead and, 11 victims, 2 dead and 9 injured in the shooting, but there's many more victims, the families of these students, the Brown University community, Providence, the city of Providence, and the state of Rhode Island. The human toll is really outrageous here, and we've seen active shootings all over this world. We just saw the Bondi Beach one in Australia, and it is horrifying. And when we have to have little limericks like run, fight, hide, and that's how people are trained to deal with active shooter situations, it has become part of our culture, no doubt, Mike.
Yeah, that's sad, and it has been. In this case, after the barn doors close, after the horse has gone out, but Brown needs to update its security measures, its procedures, its processes, its video. They need to have IDs for people coming onto campus. The students need to be challenged. They can do this because they do it at many other campuses. So hopefully they'll get their butt in gear. But at this point, what I want to know is motive, because it doesn't look like, from what we hear, that he intentionally tried to kill that poor girl or that poor guy. Because 9 other people were shot. It seems more like a spray and pray kind of thing. I want to know what he said. I want to know his motive, because if you know his motive, you could figure out maybe who this guy is. He had a motive to come there. He didn't just find his way for no reason whatsoever. Somewhere, somehow, he figured that was a place to go. He had a lot of hostilities towards some sort of people, and he said something. I want to know what that is, and I think the public needs to know what that is. Whatever it is, the public needs to know, and you can't rely on the mayor or the governor to give you straight information. Their priority is their political future. It's not the lives of the kids involved in this case.
Mike, there's so many things we want to know, and we will find out. Someone's going to be arrested in this case. Sure. I have confidence on this. But as I've said numerous times, I think in most cities across this country, law enforcement is so good that the public gets spoiled with how difficult these investigations really are. And we don't want to hear that the perpetrator has yet to have been caught yet. We want to hear that he's under arrest and we got the right guy. But the nature of investigation is you don't always get it right immediately. Sometimes you get it right later on. And a couple of talking heads on some of the channels said, when you get it wrong at first, what must you do? You must start over. And no one wants to start over after they know how much work they did to begin with. Now you want us to start over? Oh my God. How are we going to do that? Because many may have been sold on the fact that the person of interest who was in custody was the guy, and it wasn't. And now they have to start over. I want to play this from Fox, and they bring on retired FBI agent James Gagliano, who's a real smart guy, graduate of West Point. I know he's studying for his PhD at St. John's University in New York. He knows his stuff, and I want to play him. He talks a little bit about this investigation.
And that's why you saw that, because the investigations change on a daily basis.
James, what do you make of this case? Because previous shootings like this, the shooter wanted to be known, didn't necessarily want to flee. So is there a clue there as to what kind of a person this was?
Yeah, we still don't have motive, Dana and Bill, and that's going to be a big piece of this. But the aperture of the investigation is opening up. Every day we're getting more and more video. Why is that? This only happened 65 hours ago. So you remember the Luigi Mangione case, 5 days to find and capture the shooter. In the Tyler Robinson case, where he shot and killed Charlie Kirk, took about 3 days. Most people were away for the weekend in those surrounding neighborhoods. Now they're coming back home. They're going looking at the Ring cameras, and we're getting a better idea on this. Dana, to your point, you brought out the Washington Post column written by Jim Garrity. In that column, a student back in 2021 had written and complained about the surveillance state at Brown. To Bill's point, Brown University is a quarter mile by a quarter square mile. It's a postage stamp, and there are 800 security cameras blanketing the campus. If he was on campus, we've got to find better video to move this investigation forward.
Great in the sense that it's good information. James, here is one of those students talking about that point and a bit of the frustration.
When the shooting happened, it took 4 hours to get even a single video of the perpetrator released. And the fact that we're in such a surveillance state, but that wasn't used correctly at all is just so deeply frustrating.
So I understand that young woman's point there. I think it's valid, but I also think it reflects a certain expectation that we have come to have in all of us. Like in the digital age, we expect this to be instant, and it's just not that way. Answer that question.
You know, Mike, exactly. We are spoiled. We want instant gratification, right? Not to the point that to collect the video can take hours and hours and hours. And it's not the easy button that you press, easy, and voila, I have the video of the perpetrator. It takes extensive canvases. It takes some technological knowledge, because if you collect the video incorrectly, there's a risk you could erase it. So you need people that are skilled in that area. So I understand the frustration of this student, but I think we are all trained in this day and age to just press the easy button, Mike.
Yeah, and as you've done many times, these investigations are intense. A lot of times you're not going home for quite a long period of time. And even just go back to the Kohlberger case from 2022, from Thanksgiving, right before Thanksgiving, 2022. He was, from the time the horrific crime took place to the time he was arrested, was like 5 weeks. And people, after like 2 weeks, were talking about bringing in the FBI. This is a cold case. The FBI doesn't catch cold cases from local police departments, but people didn't know that. And they're saying it's a cold case, it's a cold case, it's a cold case. Meanwhile, that's a fast, 5 weeks is fast, because they had a lot of technical help from the FBI. Same thing here. It's going to seem slow, but then at the end, they're going to get this person. I have no doubt, as you have, that they're not going to get this person. They will be successful, but it is frustrating. People just get the idea that it's going to be that fast. Like, oh my goodness, you got DNA. Boom, we're going to get the guy in 72 hours. You got videotape. We're going to get him in 24 hours. No, it's not the way it works. But law enforcement has gotten so good in many respects that they get spoiled. And unfortunately, that poor girl, she's frustrated, and we understand, but it's unrealistic.
Yeah, I think it is. And as I said, it goes back to the instant gratification of our generation. Let me go back to James Gagliano here talking about this investigation.
And I still believe it's the video, the way he walks, or the short description we have that's going to give him away, and somebody's going to come forward. Go ahead, James.
Yep, you're describing the law and order narrative, where people are so accustomed, Bill, that everything is in a neat 1 hour package. The first half is the investigation, the second half is a successful prosecution, and you're done. It's made for TV. These things take time. This case is going to be broken down on forensics and on the fact that when you watch the video that we've got up there in the right corner, you watch that video, this individual does not look like someone that resided in that neighborhood or area. He looks like he could be possibly searching for someone or something. He doesn't look comfortable. Could he be casing it? Absolutely. But as we get more and more video, somebody is going to see something that's going to lead to it. One last thing. Be careful here. Rhode Island, again, is a tiny state, but it's also got I-95 running through it. You've got Massachusetts and Connecticut, contiguous states. You could get out of there very quickly, but in a lot of instances, we find these guys close to where the shooting and the murders happen. And that's what I think police are keying on. Look close first and then expand the aperture out.
James, could I ask you a very quick question? They're telling me we got to go, but I want to ask you. When this first happened, initially, in custody was a person of interest. And then that lasted for about 9 hours or so. During those 9 hours, were investigators looking for somebody else, or did they think they had their guy?
You have to look for somebody else. You can't let confirmation bias mess with the investigation. Dana, I'll say this. Picking someone up who's a person of interest, you can make a brief investigative detention of someone on reasonable suspicion. They picked this guy up and brought him down to the station. That is arrest. That is a custodial interrogation. Different set of circumstances, but no, I don't believe that law enforcement folded up their tents and just focused there. You've got to follow the evidence bereft of fear or favor, and I think that's what they're doing now.
James, thanks for.
I think they're doing that now, but I disagree with James Gagliano. I think when they did get that person of interest, I think they relaxed a little bit. And instead of continually canvassing, looking for more video, collecting more evidence, I think they more or less focused on this person. And that, I believe, hurt the investigation. But as I have said all along, that investigation is equal parts art and equal parts science. And it's not the purest science where it's a sure thing. Yes, DNA is a sure thing, collecting DNA and matching it to a perpetrator. But getting this person identified, that's why we are using the media, and that's why we are using the public. That's why we are putting these pictures out there, because someone knows this rotund individual who has a really sort of a strange walk that is on that campus, perhaps looks like he doesn't belong on this campus. So if you see something, say something. And we have the tips line out there. And that's what the police, and not just the Providence police, the police in all these major investigations. And we cite the Boston Marathon bombers. That case was solved through cell phone video from the public, Mike. And that's how we identified the Tsarnaev brothers, two of the bombers, brothers. They were brothers, Dzhokhar and Tamerlan Tsarnaev. One was killed in a shootout with the Watertown police, all heroes. Jim McClellan, if you're listening, he's one of my heroes, a sergeant that shot it out with the Tsarnaev brothers. He was on the show once before. True American hero. They were outgunned. The Tsarnaev brothers had bombs that they were throwing at the Watertown police, improvised explosive devices. That's what you have across this great country. Small town police that are ready to put their lives on the line to protect the public. And in this case, I have no doubt that the police are the same. They're diligent. They're doing their best. 3 days have gone by and no one's under arrest. And because the police are so good across this country, people are getting impatient that there's been no one under arrest yet, Mike.
Yeah, I think people should be confident that despite initial setbacks and a lot of errors in the very beginning with the crime scene, controlling that area, allowing the witnesses all to go home, rather than saying, look, we're gonna talk to you people. It's gonna take like 6 or 8 hours, and then you can, communicate with other people, but we need to speak to you. Despite all that, I think that they will catch this guy. I think Brown is being stingy. Come on, come up with another $50,000. The more money you put out,
50,000. They probably have $1 billion dollar
Yeah.
endowment. Loosen up your pockets. You know, come
Come
up with
on.
100K. There's 150K. Someone's gonna loosen up their lips for 150K.
That's right. That's right. And I think they will get this person. It might take a week or two, but I believe they will catch this person, no doubt.
Absolutely. Let's hear from CNN with Anderson Cooper right now.
The teaching assistant leading it says he locked eyes with the man who then began shooting.
The first couple gunshots went straight to the chalkboard, exactly where I was standing. So who knows, if I didn't duck, maybe I'm not here today. There was actually a girl who was sitting right next to me. She had 2 bullets in her legs. As much training as you could possibly get when there's an active shooter, you're never going to be prepared when it actually takes place.
Well, 2 students were killed in the shooting. Ella Cook, who's 19 years old from Alabama, and 18-year-old Mohammad Aziz Mirzakov from Uzbekistan. 9 others were wounded. And by this time yesterday, a man was in custody. He had since been released and cleared, leading to questions about the FBI's handling of the case, including this evening for the president.
See, right there, there's media bias. The FBI is not handling this case. And then you just heard Anderson Cooper put that untruth out there. The Providence police are running this case, Anderson, not the FBI. Again, just misinformation.
Has Kash Patel told you why it's been so difficult for the FBI to identify who the shooter is?
Well, it's always difficult. So far, we've done a very good job of doing it with Charlie, with, the various times this has happened. They've done it in pretty much record time. But you really have to ask the school a little bit more about that because, this was a school problem. They had their own guards, they had their own police, they had their own everything. But you'd have to ask that question really to the school, not to the FBI. We came in after the fact.
Lieutenant John Berman joins us now from Providence, not far from the crime scene. What is the atmosphere like there tonight with this shooter still at large?
I got to say, Brown University, where I'm standing right now, and actually the crime scene is right behind me. That is the engineering building where the Principles of Economics class was held on Saturday, where the shooter went in, killed 2 people and injured 9. But since that day, they canceled classes here. They called off finals. So students have left, and they left in droves, Anderson, today. One of the things I saw walking down the streets just constantly was people with their wheelie bags, students trying to get out because now they have this renewed fear with this killer still very much on the loose. The investigation took this new turn today with the release of that new video, which you showed before. And it's worth reiterating, I think, what was new in that video we saw. For the first time, you did see the size of the man. The FBI saying about 5'8", stocky, they say, which you can tell by looking at it. This isn't, I don't think, high-tech forensics, but you can see he is a somewhat portly man there. And in the video, you see him walking across the street. Our Andy McCabe looked at it before. If not a limp, at least a little bit of a noticeable hitch in the gait there. Obviously now this $50,000 reward for any information that leads to is captured. But Anderson, I think that in itself, the fact that tonight, almost 50 hours plus since the shooting, that they're offering a $50,000 reward tells you they still need help.
Yeah, Brown University, loosen up your pockets. Take some of that $1 billion endowment and loosen it up and put it into the reward with the FBI's 50K. Come up with another 100. You got 150K. The phone will start ringing. Trust me. And if it doesn't, raise it to 200,000. You have the money. You're an Ivy League school. You charge these kids $70,000 to $80,000 a year to attend your school. Loosen up the pockets, Brown University. Mike.
Yeah, Bill. And, this is an issue with many colleges, not all, but many colleges do not want a lot of security. They do not want a lot of fences. They do not want a lot of cameras, even blue lights that they came up with like 20 years ago. A lot of them don't want that. They feel that it's a bad impression. It gives people the wrong impression that there's crime taking place. I see this, and sadly, Brown maybe they took down some of the cameras or did some other things, and sometimes you do need some law enforcement visible out there. If there was one law enforcement person from Brown University that asked him for his ID the first time they saw him. What are you doing wandering around here? You're not an employee. We don't recognize you. You don't have an ID card. Who are you? Are you a member of the community? Just that would have scared him away. He probably would not have come back. You know, Brown University has a lot to answer for. To me, I think they're very negligent in the way they operate their security.
Well, Mike, you know, as James Gagliano, retired FBI agent James Gagliano said on Fox, is that it's a postage stamp of a size school, and they have 800 video cameras. That's not enough. In fact, he cited years ago, one of the Brown students wrote that there's too much Big Brother watching us, 800 security. And now during situations like this, they wished that they had had more cameras.
Right.
That would have caught the entire route to and from the shooting of this wanted person who is still not identified. But, you know, as we said at the outset of this show, a lot of this is political theater, you know? And you see, how is it that 3 days after the shooting, no one said what he yelled while he was shooting? Why? That's political. I'm sure someone knows exactly what he yelled. I'm sure the police were told by the witness exactly what he yelled. That would give us potentially motive, M-O-T-I-V-E. It potentially could give us motive. I'm not going to say what it might have been because I'm waiting for the police to say it. I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for the news and the national media to say it. No one's saying anything. I got to suggest that it's possibly political. Why they're not saying
Find this killer. And there are so many cameras in major cities. I mean, we all remember the Boston Marathon bombers. There were those images that were released during the manhunt. You know, the hunt for the alleged killer, United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Does Providence not have that big of a camera network, at least in the vicinity of Brown?
You know, it's really interesting because Brown is on College Hill in Providence. Brown is, you know, from the 1770s here. It's been there. This neighborhood's a mixed neighborhood, so it's not just Brown, but it's also a few other colleges, some schools, some churches, but also a lot of residences, old Victorian homes. And plot by plot, the security situation can be different. I just took a walk actually around a 2-block area to check out that very thing. And there are some houses here that may or may not have security. Maybe they have Ring camera footage on the door, but maybe they don't. And the university itself, which is just right there, does have cameras, but authorities have been asked repeatedly about the engineering building. They're saying, you know, it was an old building. Inside, they just didn't have any view that provided any conclusive evidence. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag up here on College Hill, Anderson.
All right, John Berman, thanks. Joining me now, CNN Chief Law Enforcement.
It's the wrong question, Eric Escala. The question is, how many Republicans are going to join us?
We had. You know, the House is tied 67-67. The Republican leadership has made very clear that there isn't one vote in their caucus for getting weapons of war off the street. Without even one vote, there is no way to pass this into law. I think that was Leader Murphy's point, that it's the wrong question. The Democratic Party is united in this respect. The Republicans are equally united in saying that they won't allow it to happen. They won't even allow a vote on the floor. And that is where the change needs to happen inside the Republican caucuses.
So the executive order lays out that we'll have the data call sort of public by February and then a report by October of next year. These things take a little bit of time to get the right data. So we'll be working with insurance companies to collect that, analyze it, and then have a report. Yep.
Watch them squawk.
And I fully expect, this is what we'll see, I'm sure we will see, as we're seeing in every single agency in the federal government, an attack on Minnesota. I would fully expect, probably as soon as this afternoon, an attack by them on the unconstitutional nature of doing this, because it's what they do. Minnesota is going to carve a path here, especially on this gathering of data, especially making this about an insurance issue and the cost to it. And then I think all of you are making the connections here, connecting it back to the manufacturers who are flooding the streets with these cheap weapons of war to try and get them out to make a profit. We'll make sure that there's an accountability around that. Sue me. No. What does anybody see a pattern of obstruction here? Is any of those statements express condolences to the family of Annunciation? We understand what you're trying to do. We disagree with you. These folks aren't political. I don't know their political ideology. And you heard that from them. They are trying their best to walk both sides of this. It's my responsibility to tell where the story's at on this. That's their first response to this with people, and that's our first response after mass shootings this weekend. That's our first response to it. I don't know. I hope this group is responsible as a profession to not lose the plot here. Yeah. That was, and when they said, and Leader Stevenson said it, they said, no. Again, I don't know how to make this any easier to all of you. I get it. They don't agree with this. That's fair. That's a fair point to be in. But people are begging us to put something forward. If they're right, put it forward and have it fail. I didn't ask them. They can vote their own conscience. I don't care on that part of it. I don't understand why this is so difficult to understand. This could move forward. We could have this. You wouldn't be trying to nitpick one or two Democrats when you have 100+ Republicans, and we're just asking for one to step forward and do the right thing on this. And I don't know. I don't know what to say. If you're one of those suburban legislators, it's 78%. I'd try it out in Rochester, Minnesota. Those are folks that operate on people down there. They would know. Yeah, because the families are here. They're continuing to talk to me. I'm hearing it constantly. There's frustration, and I absorb this. It's my responsibility to do all I can to move it. But these folks are frustrated with me that it's not happening too, and I'm responding to them. They said, Governor, we need you to, okay, that's what we're supposed to do. I will do what I can do. We did a lot of research on these. It's taken a while to make sure we were locked in on what we were able to get. But we'll continue to do more. But it's the frustration out of parents. They expect action. They expect us to do things, and we got here. Yeah. It could happen today. I'm just going to say again, if one person woke up today in the Republican caucus and said, you know, we should vote on this, at least let the public have the vote. I'm going to vote no. I don't think it's good, but we should just let the public. It's an important issue. These shootings are happening. We've had 2 schools closed today. We have trauma across our state in these things. So yeah, I would argue it could happen today. We could do this. These folks would put us into session. They would follow the rules. I don't know, 3 days, something. We could get in, get out, see how it worked. But yeah, but I think you all know the answer. They're not going to do anything. They are not going to do anything. And that's the way the democracy works. And then next November, the people decide if they want something done on it or not.
Senator, can I circle back and have you respond to that as well as what your caucus is going to vote for? And the upcoming session on the
You know, Senator Latz and Senator Mohammed are both here. They held hearings after the Annunciation shooting. My colleagues brought forward a number of proposals. The Republicans brought 0 proposals to those hearings. Senator Latz and Senator Mohammed are working with our caucus on a variety of issues that we will bring forward, and I expect that there will be a vote. And I can let either of them get into more detail if you'd like, but we're preparing. Thank you.
All right.
All right, so we were listening in there to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is saying that he is signing, and we did in fact see him sign 2 executive orders to reduce gun violence in the state. Stepping away for our final break of the hour, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Stephanie Quinu. This continues to be a very busy Tuesday here, and I did want to share a number of live events that we are expecting to get underway. The very first one here takes us out to Los Angeles, as coming up at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So in just about an hour or so, we are expecting to hear from the Los Angeles District Attorney as they speak on Nick Reiner. Now, Nick Reiner was expected to appear in court for the very first time today. However, his attorney said that he was not medically cleared to do so. So we are expecting an update on that. Meanwhile, we are also expecting an update on another major story that we continue to follow, and that takes us out to Providence, Rhode Island. Coming up at 5 p.m. Eastern time, we're hearing that officials will be speaking about the very latest in the investigation into the Brown University shooting, as they still do not have a suspect in custody. They did have a person of interest in custody, and they later released that individual. We also want to share this with you here as well as we continue to follow all of the major stories. This takes us out to tomorrow. President Trump announcing a national address, sharing this statement via Truth Social, saying, "My fellow Americans, I will be giving an address to the nation tomorrow night, live from the White House at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I look forward to seeing you then. It has been a great year for our country, and the best is yet to come." So a major announcement expected from President Trump at 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. And of course, you can count on Live Now from Fox to bring you all of these events as they unfold. In the meantime, though, we are going to head to another event that we weren't able to get to earlier today, as we were in live coverage throughout. And that takes us out to Florida, where Polk County Grady Judd, the sheriff there, was speaking about the arrest of a teen murder suspect. We're going to dip into that as we do keep our eye on other live events. Christina Evans will be your host after that. Stay with us.
Brief you on two topics. The first one being a murder. So let me tell you about this. It's called Polo Park, Polk, Orange, Lake, and Osceola. It is a retirement community. It's Polo Park West. It's right up at 27 and 192, where all of the counties intersect. It is a remarkable retirement community where people not only retire in their golden years, but they look out for each other. It's a fun community. It's a fun place to live. So let me take you to Sunday afternoon about 1 or 1:30. A neighbor called the sheriff's office and said, you know, I'm real concerned about my friend, John Torneo, who's 67. We're pretty close, and I haven't seen or heard from him in a couple of days. Around September, he had a 19-year-old kid move in with him. John's a retired nurse for 30 years in Connecticut, just a superhuman being and always wants to help people. Well, last Wednesday, he made this 19-year-old leave because he wasn't help paying the rent, he wasn't help keeping up the house, so they put him out. And now I haven't seen John in a couple of days. So our deputy arrives at the scene, and the neighbor has a key to the house. So while the neighbor goes in to look in the house, our deputy stays outside and is doing some work on the computer and is working with a real-time crime center. The deputy discovers that the victim's vehicle is traveling south on Highway 27, and the deputy thinks, well, he's just not home. The neighbor comes back out of the house and says, no, he's not in there. So the deputy thinks, well, he's not in there. His vehicle's moving south on 27, and in 12 minutes clears the call. The neighbor goes home, is watching football games and texting and trying to call his friend, John, and there's no answer. And it's eating at the neighbor, and he says, something's just wrong about this. This is not my friend, John Torneo, that I know. So the neighbor gets with a couple of other neighbors. They go back to the house by themselves, unlock the house, and go in. Now, there's one bedroom that's locked. So they take a screwdriver and they take the lock off of the door and go in, and there's John, dead, disemboweled, eviscerated on the floor. So obviously they call the sheriff's office, and we respond to the event. Let me pause there to say that the deputy, in our estimation, who has been with us about a year, is a really fine young deputy, but obviously needs more training. So we have taken her out of patrol. She can no longer work by herself until she goes back through our third phase of training again. She, in our estimation and my estimation, did just enough, but she didn't go above and beyond. Had she gone above and beyond, had she walked around the perimeter of the house, she would have seen a screen off of the bathroom door, or excuse me, the bathroom window. So at the end of the day, it didn't make any difference. Our victim, John, had been deceased for hours and hours. So the investigation's on. Our detectives, which are the very best, who have this team only has like 2 unsolved homicides in 18 or 19 years, is on this case. We start the investigation, and what we find out is, as I reported to you, our victim had been severely cut in the stomach. And as we learned at autopsy, had also been hit in the head. We discovered our 19-year-old as Julian Trevino, and he, in fact, had been put out of the house on Wednesday. We searched and found our victim's car. During the search before we found Julian Trevino, we found that he had used the victim's credit card at a Circle K in the area, and he had used the victim's credit card at the pizza restaurant that he worked as a dishwasher. I mean, I got to tell you, Helen Keller could have followed the leads that this guy left. This is what we call a slow pitch criminal investigation. So we, through investigative means and working with our colleagues, found the victim's vehicle. And our detectives set up on the vehicle. Now, we had our suspect identified very quickly. We'd gathered evidence very quickly, and we're watching the vehicle. Now it's about 4 o'clock on Monday morning. We see our suspect come out and get into the victim's vehicle. Our detectives immediately tried to take our suspect, Julian Trevino, into custody. He didn't want to be arrested, so he fled from us. We attempted to pit the vehicle a couple of times unsuccessfully. And finally, in his urge to get away from us, he ran into a ditch and crashed the car, jumped out and ran on foot. Our homicide detectives, which are known as being meticulous kind of guys, ran him down. So they not only got to do follow-up, they got to be involved in a pursuit and catch the bad guy. I was proud of them. Quite frankly, I'd like to see him running. So when we arrested him, then he confessed. And this is what he told us. I was really angry when he put me out of the house, and now I'm having to live in a shed by a friend's house. I didn't want to go away from my girlfriend. He never left the vicinity from where he committed the murder. So about 3 to 4 o'clock on Sunday morning, he goes back to John's house and he breaks in. He breaks in to the bathroom window and hides in a closet. When he hears our victim, John, settle in for the night, then he goes to stealing cash, credit cards. And what happens then? Our victim wakes up. He sees Julian. He understands who he is because he's lived with him since about September. And our victim confronts Julian and says, "You're not supposed to be here." At that point in time, our suspect told us, "I shoved John down on the bed and ran to the kitchen and retrieved a knife, a butcher knife. I ran back to the bedroom and I stabbed him and I cut him." He eviscerated him. And then he took a wine bottle. John keeps a wine cooler in his bedroom. Menage a Trois was the wine. You can buy it for $7.49. And beat him in the head with it to make sure he was dead. Then he took the wine bottle and the knife, left the neighborhood. He had to walk across the street between some mobile homes. It's still dark in the 4 o'clock Sunday morning era, and threw the knife and the wine bottle into the creek. He told us he did that, and we were able to go back and recover both of them. Then he left in the victim's vehicle and was driving around using his credit cards, spending his cash when we arrested him. So in about 12 hours, 11 hours from the time our homicide team arrived, we had our suspect in custody. But it's important to understand that sometimes when you're nice to evil people, they kill you. Here's what's difficult about this to understand. John thought he was a kid needing a home, that he was homeless. Julian Trevino did not have a criminal record. John, who was a retired nurse and had helped so many people along life's way and was a great neighbor, did not have a criminal record. And this all started because another neighbor was going to John's house to provide holiday goodies and help celebrate the Christmas season. It's sad. It's real sad. But we have him in custody. We have evidence, mountains of evidence. And now we are wrapping up the investigation, whereupon we will make sure that Julian, at a minimum, spends the rest of his life in prison. I could argue with the heinousness and the violence and the fact that he broke in, it was a home invasion, burglary, robbery, that he shoved him down, ran to the kitchen and ran back and stabbed him, eviscerated him, disemboweled him, beat him in the head with a cheap wine bottle. That maybe the state attorney will decide that this should be a capital murder, but that's the state attorney's decision, and we'll fully support that. Our state attorney's office, Brian Haas and his team, are simply the very best. Are there any questions about this event?
Sheriff, first of all, what was the original reason?
All right, as you see, they're listening in to the Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd as he's speaking there on a teen murder suspect who has been arrested. He took some time to describe what happened there in Winter Haven, Florida. So we want to make sure we brought that to you here on Live Now from Fox. We are going to take this opportunity to slide away for our first 2-minute commercial break of the hour. I'm your host, Christina Evans. My thanks to my colleague, Stephanie Quinu, who was with you for the last few hours, taking you through today's top stories. We're going to continue to do the same. And as we step away for this 2-minute commercial break soon, we are expecting to get remarks there from outside of the White House. We're hearing reports that it could be potentially Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stepping up to the microphone to make a few remarks. But as you can see, a group of journalists all gathered there, ready to ask questions and listen into those statements. Stay right here with us on Live Now. Thanks for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Christina Evans. We do want to continue on with our coverage of today's top stories and live events as they're coming into our newsroom. In just a second, we're going to listen into the remainder of that press conference that we received earlier today from Polk County there in Florida. But before we head back there, I want to put up a few live vantage points that we have on our screen here. We are anticipating that this will get underway soon. This is the White House stakeout camera. And so as you can see, there's a group of microphones and a group of journalists all standing around, anticipating that some White House officials will be stepping up to the podium to make a few remarks shortly. Once that gets underway, we'll certainly take you out to it here on Live Now from Fox. In the meantime, though, staying there in Washington, D.C., but over in a different building on Capitol Hill, we're still looking and waiting as this stakeout camera is also here. We're going to be anticipating hearing remarks from Senate and House leadership. Once those begin, we'll take you out to it in full here on Live Now from Fox. Lastly, I want to show you this visual that we have here. This is all the way across the country in San Francisco. And so what we're showing you is an update on something that our stations there in San Francisco are now covering, but there are faith groups now standing out and protesting outside of an ICE facility there in the city. And so ultimately what we're seeing here is that more than 100 people from Bay Area faith communities earlier today locked arms outside of ICE's San Francisco field office in an effort, as what they're describing, to try to stop ICE from kidnapping community members at their immigration check-ins. And so we're continuing to watch here. Those protesters did initially show up early this morning at about 6:30 a.m. local time. Those offices were set to open at 8 a.m. this morning. But as you can see, as we're getting later and later into the day, now into the 11 a.m. hour, those protesters there on the West Coast still there outside. And so at this point, our partners there at Fox 2 say that there have not appeared to be any conflicts between protesters and law enforcement, but a spokesperson for ICE has not yet gotten back to any of those requests for comment. So we'll continue to keep our eye here on this shot and watch as all of this is happening. If anything else happens or if there are any clashes that happen, we'll try to make sure we take you out to it here on Live Now from Fox. In the meantime, let's continue on. As we promised, we wanted to take you back to that press conference we were listening into with Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd. He was having a question and answer session as he brought an update on a murder suspect who has since been taken into custody. Let's continue to listen in.
First of all, how these two met. And second of all, there's just, given he's a nurse, do you just feel sorry for this kid to say, hey, come with me?
John had a history of helping those less fortunate. John had a history of wanting to provide and make a positive difference. I think it's from his experience of 30.
All right, we do have to dip out of that quickly as we are now getting Caroline Levitt speaking outside the White House. Let's listen.
President Trump is going to be giving a joint address an address to the nation, not a joint address, an address to the nation tomorrow night, live from the White House here, 9 o'clock Eastern. I know you guys will all be tuning in. It's going to be a really good speech. I was just in the Oval Office with the president discussing it. He's going to talk a lot about the accomplishments over the past 11 months, all that he's done to bring our country back to greatness, and all he continues to plan to do to continue delivering for the American people over the next 3 years. As for the Vanity Fair article, Michael, I'll take your question directly. This is, unfortunately, another example of disingenuous reporting, where you have a reporter who took the chief of staff's words wildly out of context, did not include the context those conversations were had within. And then further, I think the most egregious part of this article was the bias of omission that was clearly present. And we see a lot of this when dealing with the media every day. You will leave out important context, leave out comments and facts. You know, many people in this building spoke with that reporter, and those comments were never included in the story, probably because it didn't push this false narrative of chaos and confusion that the reporter was clearly trying to push. So what I'll say about our chief of staff, as you've seen from not just myself, but also the entire cabinet, and a groundswell of support from people on Capitol Hill who don't even work in this building, about how incredible Susie Wiles has been to President Trump. And he's been able to accomplish so much because of his leadership and his tenacity, but also because of Chief of Staff Wiles's leadership and her ability to effectuate his agenda. So thank you.
Policy changes.
Thank you. All right, as you see there, very brief comments that we're hearing there from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, speaking to reporters outside of the White House. And really, the main message that she wanted to give here on Live Now is the fact that President Trump will be having that big meeting that he's expected to have as he addresses the nation tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern time. But she also touched on something that's been making headlines today in the political world. It was a series of candid interviews given with Vanity Fair that the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, opened up about President Trump and his cabinet through this second term. Wiles did take part in 11 interviews that occurred in real time. But as you heard there, some members of the White House are now pushing back against those interviews that were given, saying that the White House Chief of Staff's comments were taken, quote, wildly out of context. Of course, we'll continue to watch and keep up with the very latest. If President Trump decides to make any remarks on that same interview, we'll also make sure we give it to you here on Live Now from Fox. In the meantime, though, what Caroline was focused on as well, teasing ahead to this, President Trump made this announcement via his Truth Social page, saying, "My fellow Americans, I will be giving an address to the nation tomorrow night, live from the White House at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I look forward to seeing you then. This has been a great year for the country, but the best is yet to come." In the meantime, let's get over to other headlines and top stories as we do see Senate Majority Leader John Thune now speaking live.
Illegal immigrant admitted into the country. And we made a big investment in the border wall, fully funding the border wall. We've made a big investment in national security at a time when we live in a very dangerous world. Energy independence was a priority, and as you know, on the One Big Beautiful Bill. And obviously newborn accounts, you can go right down the list of what I think are very consequential accomplishments and things that are going to benefit the American people for years and years to come. So we are very pleased about how things have gone. You add on top of that, we're going to have over 400 nominees confirmed by the end of the year, which is way ahead of the previous two administrations. And if you look at the number of Congressional Review Act resolutions of disapproval, repealing burdensome, I should say, Biden regulations, we have, I think, now passed 24 of those, and 22 have been signed into law. So a lot accomplished, but we aren't going to rest on our laurels around here. We're going to keep our foot on the gas. And as we think about next year already, we're working to put together an agenda that we think will continue to build on the success of this last year, but also set us up for success in 2026 and make sure that the American people, that we are doing everything we can to deliver on our promise to make this country safer, stronger, and more prosperous. And it's all about safer streets. It's all about more money in your pockets of the American people, and it's all about new opportunities for the American people to get ahead. So that'll be the question, Jeff.
Good afternoon. Nothing's going to get done on healthcare now, right, this year? And what makes anyone think, based on the experience last week, that anything could get done next year, especially considering that this is always one of the most nettlesome policy issues in the building?
It's a complicated issue, no doubt about it. A lot of moving parts, and we have very different visions about what healthcare ought to look like. But I would tell you, as you know, I think the Republican vision of healthcare is actually to make it more affordable, to drive down the cost of premiums in this country, which the bill that we voted on last week in the Senate would have done. And in the contrary view of that, the Democrat proposal, as you know, that was voted on was a simple extension of a program that is rife with waste, fraud, and abuse, and extends a program at a cost of $83 billion to the American taxpayer, and continues to drive premiums higher and higher and higher. I mean, our views on healthcare and the Democrat views on healthcare are very different. And I think that's a difficult challenge that we have to figure out how to overcome. But if they're willing to accept changes that actually would put more power and control and resources in the hands of the American people and less of that in the pockets of the insurance companies, I think there's a path forward. And there was a good meeting, I think, as you know, yesterday among Democrats and Republicans where a lot of these issues were, I think, very candid discussions were held. But you're right, we're not going to pass anything by the end of this week. But I do think there is a potential pathway in January if Democrats are willing to come to the table on things that actually will drive down the cost of health care.
Given the difficulty of getting through the amendment process, particularly with the air safety issue overhanging, can you avoid this NDAA going back to the House, number one? And number two, when you look at the NDAA and the time it takes to bolster our shipbuilding capacity to get planes delivered, are we up to snuff when it comes to dealing with rapid military buildup by the Chinese military?
I think we have this saying in my office, and I believe it's true, and that is that if you don't get national security right, the rest is just conversation. You got to be able to defend the country. And I think that the things that we are doing, the investments were made not only in the bill we passed last summer, the reconciliation bill, but this Defense Authorization Act, although it doesn't have as much in there for defense as a lot of us would like, is a step in the right direction. And I think the Defense Appropriations Bill, which hopefully we'll vote on later this week, is another example of the investment that we need to be making to ensure that in a dangerous world, we are prepared to defend America and American interests against the bad actors that are out there. And I think peace through strength is not just a phrase. It's not just a throwaway line. It is a policy that most of us believe in, and I think this White House believes in, and we're going to be working closely with them to ensure that we have the resources in place in order to keep the country safe.
Secretary Hicks said that the Pentagon is not going to be releasing the full video of the September 2nd double strike against the initial survivors. A number of Republican senators say that they disagree with that. They think the full video should be released. Personally, what's your view on that issue?
I have, as I've said before, left that up to the Senate Armed Services Committee. We have a committee that has jurisdiction over all things pertaining to national security and an intelligence committee as well, both of which have, I think, great insights into how best to handle important, sensitive information like this. And so I'm going to trust their judgment on that. I encourage you to take it up with Chairman Wicker, Chairman Cotton, or others who are on those committees and who have seen and will see most of that information.
Keeping the calls to address stability and lower the temperature in politics. Do you think the president should retract the statements he made about Rob Biden and widely criticized on both sides of the aisle?
Look, I have answered that question. You guys have been posing that for the last couple of days. All I can say is my view of it. I can't speak for what the president has said. What I can tell you is I think it was a horrible tragedy. Just tragic loss of life, a story which continues to unfold. And all I can say is that my sympathies and condolences and prayers are with the family and with their friends. Thank you all very much.
All right, as you see there, I wanted to make sure we brought those remarks to you live here on Live Now from Fox as Senate Majority Leader John Thune took some time today to answer questions there to the media that's inside the Capitol building. And of course, he answered a whole host of questions. He talked about healthcare and what is necessarily going to be done this year. He was asked very pointedly, is anything going to happen on healthcare this year? He kind of alluded to the fact that there was nothing that was anticipated to happen before the Senate leaves for the year. And so we'll continue to keep our eyes on that. At the end of it, he was also asked about Rob Reiner. Of course, you know that we've been following that story very closely as his son, Nick Reiner, has been arrested in the murder of his mother and his father. We'll continue to keep you updated. He was expected to be in court today, but was not medically cleared to be able to attend. And so in the meantime, we'll continue to keep you updated with any other top stories that are brought to us here as it pertains to that. In the meantime, I do want to continue on with our top stories that we're following there as we're waiting for other members there of the House or the Senate to step up to the stakeout camera. A bit earlier today, we heard some of those remarks there from Thune as he attended the meeting with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, as well as Pete Hegseth, Defense Secretary, speaking about some of the strikes that have been happening on boats in the Caribbean. We heard remarks there from Senator Mark Kelly, the Democrat from Arizona. Let's listen into that here on Live Now from Fox.
Right here. He actually brought it up in the brief, oddly, which I thought was, just some reiterating his talking points on this. When I was specifically asking him questions about strikes, again shows that this is very performative for him, even in front of a group of senators. What I did learn down there is they don't want to be that transparent with us. There were 6 briefers that used up about 35 to 40 minutes of the hour that we had. And then we had 20 minutes for questions. So of 100 senators in the room, maybe 6 of us got to ask questions of the group, and then it was over, then they left. So, my takeaway from this is I have more questions now than when I walked in. They didn't give very good answers. So we did learn a few things, which in, my view makes this entire operation even more questionable.
When you say you have more questions, what are those questions?
Well, I'm not going to get into, specifically what I learned in a classified brief, but there were things that the, Admiral Allen said that leads to even more questions.
Senator, when you say you asked a question and then the Secretary had some brought up investigation, how exactly?
He didn't say investigation. He his talking points on the video that the 6 of us released and what he thinks about this. And then eventually I replied to him and I said, hey, these are the same views you had in 2016. Very eloquently, I said, like the way he expressed himself in 2016 about this, same issue. And I said, by the way, you were specifically speaking about this president. He didn't really say anything, and he was trying not to answer some of the specific questions that I had about these boat strikes.
Some of you in that video are going to get access to see that edited video.
Yeah, I'll see it tomorrow. Yeah, it should be released, certainly, to every U.S. senator. There is no reason why to pick and choose, like you're on armed services or you're on intel, you get to see this. We're all equal in this job. We represent people all across this country. And it's all of our responsibility to hold this administration, Department of Defense, accountable for their actions. But they have issues. Obviously, they have issues with what is in that video, and that's why they don't want everybody to see it. What we also need is open hearings so the American public can learn about this directly from the people that they employ, the Secretary of Defense, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the admiral in charge of the operation. All those individuals should be in a public hearing, and that video, by the way, should be released publicly. They released all the video that they liked, and then they got to one specific video that they know creates some problems for them, and for that reason they don't want it released.
A few weeks ago that you trust Chairman Wicker and he's going to conduct oversight on this. Do you still feel like he will hold hearings?
I think he's going to try to. Yeah, sure.
Do you accept anything about Secretary Hegseth's argument that the full unedited videos and the level of classification that can't be shown to all?
Well, I haven't seen it yet, but that's what he claims. But he showed other videos, and very quickly, by the way. They're all about getting views on his Twitter account. It's rather performative. But this operation is, not like other operations that they try to compare it to, right? There's no authorization from Congress. It is not like when we went after Al-Qaeda. This is different. And to me, this still feels like this is law enforcement. This is drug interdiction. And we don't want cocaine coming to U.S. shores. Fentanyl, by the way, is a much bigger problem. And if you took the resources that are being applied to this problem in the Caribbean, and you put those resources on the southern border at the land ports of entry with technology to detect and interdict fentanyl, that's where you're going to get some good results. Because this operation is costing millions and millions of dollars every single day. Let me just say, those routes through the Caribbean are not to traffic fentanyl. Everybody knows that. They don't even have to. Nobody will even ask that question because everybody understands that these are routes to traffic cocaine predominantly to Western Africa and to Europe.
Has DOD reached out to
Well, I have tremendous respect for Senator Sheehy. I asked a question to the Admiral, the Coast Guard Admiral, about how many interdictions have they done in the same period of time. I'm not going to tell you what he said, but that is the question I had for him. I think you'd be surprised by the answer.
Has DOD reached out to you at all as part of their investigation into the video?
The last thing I heard from DOD regarding me personally was in 2011 when I retired from the United States Navy and was given the Legion of Merit for my service to this country. Just about sending a message to retired service members, active duty service members, government employees. Do not speak out against this president or there will be consequences. So it's a lot bigger than, just dealing with me. And that's why they don't handle this professionally. Like you would expect at some point that DOD would notify me of like an investigation, but they haven't. And they haven't because I think what they really care about is the public message. They're going after me, a U.S. Senator, for something I said that was lawful. It was the truth. It was something people are trained on. It was something that Pete Hegseth said in 2016 multiple times. And in his case, specifically about this president and his concerns. They don't want other people saying these kind of things. So they're trying to shut people up. But in this case, they picked the wrong guy because I'm not going to shut up about this. I'm going to continue to do my job. I'm going to stick up for our Constitution. I mean, I think Pete Hegseth is a guy who goes to work every day to try to figure out how does he please the president. That's a recipe for some major problems.
All right, thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Appreciate it.
All right, as you see there, very powerful words there from Senator Mark Kelly, the Democrat from Arizona, speaking out after the briefing that was held a bit earlier today on the drug boat strikes in the Caribbean. Ultimately, what we know, though, is that the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, has since said that the Pentagon will not be releasing a full unedited video, but he did say that those who it's necessary for them to see it will be allowed to see it behind the scenes. We wanted to make sure we brought you that headline here on Live Now from Fox. In the meantime, though, we are going to get ready to step away for a 2-minute commercial break. On the other side, we'll be taking you out to one of the other heartbreaking updates from the top story that we're following from over the weekend. I'm putting this up on your screen. This is new pictures that have just been released by the Providence Police Department. This is the person of interest in the Brown University shooting incident that took place on campus. And so, of course, we know that manhunt is now underway and is continuing to go on as they're asking for the public's help. In just 2 minutes, we're going to be speaking to a student who was on campus at the time of the shooting, getting some perspective of what those moments were like. Stay right here with us on Live Now from Fox. Thanks for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Christina Evans. We do want to continue on with our top stories that we're now following today. I want to put this back up on your screen. This is from the FBI in Boston. And so new details are now emerging at this hour as the FBI, in coordination with the Providence, Rhode Island Police Department, are now releasing newly enhanced photos of this person of interest in a mass shooting that took place at Brown University on Saturday. The FBI is now offering a reward of up to $50,000 for information that leads to the identification, arrest, and conviction of the individual responsible. And of course, they have the contact information there on your screen as well. And so this all happened and unfolded just a few days ago as it happened inside of the engineering building around 4 p.m. last Saturday. 2 Brown University students were killed. 9 others have been injured in the process as well. And so the manhunt is still underway at this time, but we're now getting new details from those who were on campus at the time of the shooting. And I now want to bring into the conversation second-year physics master student, Ref Berry. Ref, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I first want to say condolences to you and all of those on campus who were with you at the same time. Because from how I understand it, Ref, you were in the engineering building at the time that those initial shots rang out. I want to just take a moment first and have you walk us through what your day looks like going into it. Was it another average day? And where were you at the time when you heard some of those gunshots ringing out?
Yeah, so the gunshots happened right behind me. So it was just a regular Saturday. I had actually woken up pretty late that day because I submitted a final project 5:30 a.m. in the morning, the night before or the morning before. And so I woke up at like 12 and I thought it was going to be the most relaxing day ever. I hit the gym. I saw a couple of my friends at the Nelson Center. And by the time I got out of the gym, it was like 2:30-ish or so. And so I headed to the physics master's office, which is in the Barris and Hawley building. And so I met with some of my T-Rex team members, the satellite team members. And after we finished meeting, we bid farewell for the holidays. And I saw some of my friends in the engineering office next door. And then I felt hungry. So I left the physics office, the engineering offices, both of which are on the first floor of Barris and Hawley. And I started walking down the hallway. And so you walk down the hallway and you emerge at the physics lobby. The physics lobby has these 4 giant paintings of earth, water, air, and fire. And if you turn just left behind those paintings, that's where the lecture hall, like 166 is, where the shooter apparently was. So it was about maybe 3:55 or so. I was gonna go to the diner, to the Ratty to eat. And so I start walking down a bunch of stairs that leads to the commons area of Barris and Hawley, what's called the Hazeltine Commons. In front of me, there's about 100 students studying for final exams and doing final projects. People have their headphones on, listening to music, whatever. And just as I'm on the second or third step of this staircase, that's when I hear the first like bang, 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 like shots. At the moment, I don't know that they're shots. I just hear this like pop, pop, pop sound behind. And so I quickly glance behind me and there's nothing. The lobby is empty. And so I'm pretty sure that I misheard something. But clearly there's nothing behind me. The lobby is empty. And I don't want to panic, obviously, in front of like 100 people. So I keep going down the stairs and we're talking seconds here. So there was a brief pause, like maybe 2 or 3 seconds. And then suddenly it's like pop, pop, pop again. And then I don't look back. I run as fast as I can, just sprint for the exit. And at this time that I'm sprinting, there's maybe 5 or 6 other students also sprinting at the same time. But a majority of the 100 or so students, they're just starting to take off their headphones. They're just starting to stop doing whatever they were working on. And by the time I reach the exit, it's a mass scramble. So it's like 100 students trying to rush through 2 exits. So that's the first part of what happened that day.
I had to have been terrifying. And I think you pointed out something that was very important there. Students often there on campus having headphones on, maybe not even being able to hear or realize that there's some sort of commotion happening. But in the moments when you heard them and you said you heard this pop, 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 this bang, 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 and you realized that there were gunshots, did you think that you were in any imminent danger? Is that how you were able to take off so quickly and head towards the exit?
So the thing is, I was already going to the diner. I was already going to get dinner. And so I was the first person out of the left exit because I was already on my way. I had my jacket on and everything. The thing is, when the first like pop, pop, pop sounds went off, when I looked behind me, there was nothing. So I was pretty sure. I mean, the first thing that comes to your mind is not like, this is a gun, right? Like, I don't even know what a gun sounds like in real life. So I was pretty sure like I misheard something. But and I know friends who were literally taking a quiz at that time in the main commons area who had headphones on and stuff. So they didn't think, they thought it was like some kind of construction sound or something. But it was during the second like bang, like pop, pop, pop that suddenly made it like super, super real. There was like a brief like 2 or 3 second pause between the pops.
And so with all of that unfolding around you, and now it's been a few days since that this all first happened, I have to ask you, I want to put this up on the screen. This is some of the surveillance footage that the police and the FBI are continuing to try to let us hear on media sources, as well as all across the nation, really take a look at, because this is the man that they are considering their person of interest, I should say. Now, how are you feeling knowing that this incident occurred, but no one has been taken into custody at this time?
Well, it's obviously scary. I mean, it's scary beyond words. After I escaped Garrison Holly, I was hiding in a bathroom with a stranger, a friend who took me in, and we were hiding in her bathroom for 2 hours, and we actually didn't know if it was one shooter or multiple shooters. And we were scared that the shooter was roaming the streets and was gonna run into our hiding place at any time. So it's obviously scary. That being said, Brown is doing everything it can to support us. Our professors have put us in touch with the psychological counseling services and therapists, and they're trying to do everything they can. But obviously, this guy roaming the streets is the last thing we want.
Quite frightening. And I want to put up, you were speaking there from some of those leaders there at the university. This is with a new statement that has just been put out earlier today, saying, this is from the university's president, Christina Paxton, saying 3 days ago, we lost 2 members of our Brown community to an act of unimaginable and senseless violence. These were 2 young people who were both amazing promise and extinguished too soon. Both were at or near the beginning of their Brown journey. Actually, they were at the beginning of a lot of things, starting a new chapter away from home, exploring, making new friends, learning about the world and themselves in new ways, embarking on an exciting path to what would hold them in their years at and beyond Brown. And so it's just heartbreaking to sort of hear that reaction there from the university president. As you're looking and listening to that statement, what are your thoughts, Ref?
I remember when I first came to Brown's campus, it was only 1.5 years ago, September 2024, and I had so many experiences that I had no idea were in front of me. Friends I never thought I'd make, professors whose classes I fell in love with. Everyone in that building, every single person in Garrison Holly is so young. We're all in our 20s. I'm 22, and the students in that classroom, they're like kids. They're like 17, 18. It's like they're so young, and I don't know. I can't imagine they had their full lives ahead of them. It's like hard to wrap your head around. It's gonna take a lot of time to process. I haven't had time to have a good proper cry about this. Everyone is still in shock,
And certainly would be a very shocking situation, and I certainly understand it. So, Ref, before I let you go, any final thoughts that you want to share with those who are watching out there or who may see this a little bit later? Of course, again, when this news first broke, we made sure to cover it in full here on Live Now, talking about the run, hide, that seeking shelter portion of it. But it's really the students who were there and those around who are going to continue to feel the lasting impacts.
Yeah, if I have any last words, I would say that the Brown University community is incredibly strong. And in this moment of real darkness, I'm not the main character of my story. It was the girl who saved my life, Allie, on the street, who took me into her basement, into her bathroom, and we hid in there. Professor Keith, my thesis supervisor, who checked on me, who offered me a ride, who offered to save me. Everyone who saved my life is a testament to the fact that Brown stands strong even in this really, really dark time. And we're not, whoever this person is, we're not going to let him break our community. So Brown stands strong. Yeah.
Well, Ref, you are a very impressive young man. I appreciate you for taking the time to speak with us here on Live Now from Fox. And as you said, reusing some of those resources that are available to students on campus is certainly going to be one of the most important things in the days and weeks moving forward. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Christina.
All right, we wanted to make sure we brought that to you here on Live Now from Fox. Those are some of the firsthand accounts that we're going to try to continue to bring to you as this investigation is still ongoing. I do want to put this up on your screen. It's from Fox News. Still, this is the main thing that they're trying to get out there. Those authorities who are looking out and actively investigating in this case, letting you know that there is a $50,000 reward currently out there, as Fox News Digital has now compiled all the surveillance footage and suspected gunmen at Brown University's shooting. We'll continue to watch this, but this is how those investigators are describing the suspect: as a male, approximately 5 feet 8 inches, with a stocky build. I do want to show you one last time some of the surveillance photos and video footage that we have from around the area, as we'll continue to keep our eyes not only on how this investigation is going, but some of the follow-ups from those university members as well. Stay right here with us on Live Now from Fox. We're going to slide away for our final 2-minute commercial break. Thanks for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Christina Evans. We do want to continue with our top stories that we're now following this afternoon. I want to put up this live vantage point that we have outside of the White House. Just about 30 or so minutes ago, we did hear from Caroline Leavitt as she stepped up to that stakeout camera to make a few remarks. If anyone else does, we'll continue to bring you those comments in full here on Live Now. In the meantime, though, we just heard in the last hour from Senate Majority Leader John Thune as he made remarks on healthcare and an update on the boat strike situation involving Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. A few minutes after that, we did hear from Chuck Schumer. We're going to want to play those remarks and moments out for you here on Live Now from Fox.
Okay, I thank Senator Kaine for joining me today. And we had a deeply unsatisfying briefing this morning with Secretaries Rubio and Hegseth. It asked more questions than it answered. And it was just, look, there is almost no transparency in this administration. And that reveals itself more than anything on revealing what happened on September 2nd. This morning, I demanded in front of every senator, to Hegseth's face, that he let every senator see the unedited video of what happened on September 2nd. I've seen it. It turns your stomach. It is awful, and people should see it. What the hell is Hegseth hiding? His excuse about classification, it's false, because any senator would see it in the SCIF. Now, I believe with the proper safeguards, all the American people should see it. And why is this so important? It's important in itself to see if we were obeying the law. We're a law-abiding country. But it's also important because what's going on in the Caribbean is unprecedented. We've never seen anything like it before, and it could lead to another endless war. Disclosure, hearings, which our Republican Senate friends have refused to call, serve a purpose. They force the administration and public to answer very serious questions about where they're going. And so far, we've had no transparency. September 2nd is a first step, but we need a lot of transparency. So when the truth is on your side, you don't hide the evidence. Now, on the topic of hiding things, this week the Epstein files, as you all know, are required by law to be released, and Senate Democrats will hold this administration accountable to make sure they obey the law. Full stop. We fully expect Pam Bondi and Donald Trump to dodge, duck, delay, partially release the files. If they release some documents and hide others, the American people will see right through it. Public pressure is extremely important here. Public pressure and the great work of those victims of Epstein basically forced many who didn't want to support this legislation, we did want to support it from the beginning, to vote for it. And so there was only one negative vote in the House and none in the Senate. And if they try to hide, duck, conceal, public pressure will force them to come clean. So the bottom line is we have a group of 17 members. We've divided ourselves up in task forces. We're working with the victims, the Epstein victims, their lawyers, other lawyers, people who have seen what was going on in the prosecution, who are no longer in the administration. And we will find out everything they're trying to hide. We will let the public know. And I believe we will have the full import of these files come to light. Now, something Republicans are no longer trying to hide, that category. Republicans are no longer trying to hide their total lack of a health care plan and their desire once and for all to kill the ACA tax credits, meaning more than tripling America's health care costs for too many Americans. Today, Speaker Johnson said there'll be no vote in the House to extend the credits. He has said in times in the past he will never be for extending the credits. He even acknowledged that there were some of his members, probably from the more fragile districts, Republican-held districts, that wanted to extend the credits, and he said it just was not to be. Johnson said it just was not to be. Well, tell that to an American family that's got to pay $500 to $1,000 more a month for their health care. It's just not to be. It's only just not to be because Johnson doesn't want it to be. And too many of his people are like that. Republicans are the ones in charge. They are the only impediment to extending the ACA tax credits and lowering costs for Americans. So this was just not meant to be. This is a choice that Johnson and the Republicans have made. When these tax credits expire and premiums spike, people will lose insurance, people will get sick, some will die, and many of them will go broke along the way. When it comes to health care, the damage has been done. After January 1st, it's very hard to put that toothpaste back in the tube. And Americans will know when health care dies, it was the Republicans who did it. Senator King.
Well, I want to thank our leader, Schumer, and he asked me to join him to talk a little bit about the briefing that we had this morning. I have deep, deep concern about the administration's legal rationale for all of these strikes in international waters, but I can't tell you why. I can tell you that the rationale misuses historical precedent, and the rationale advances a domestic authorization for war that's completely contrary to the Constitution, and the rationale advances an international justification that's laughable. But I can't explain to you the reasons I've reached that conclusion, because what I know, I only know from a classified setting. I would like to share with you my deep, deep worries about the targeting criteria that the Defense Department is using to go after these ships in the Pacific and Caribbean, but I can't. I know the criteria. I've been briefed about them. I've been briefed about each individual action up to 2 weeks ago, and I have deep concerns. I'm unable to share them with you or the American public because I only know it from the skiff. I'd like to share with you my concerns about the individuals who've been killed, but I can't for the same reason. I'd like to share with you my concerns about the second strike that killed struggling survivors clinging to shipwreck on September 2. But I can't fully explain why this is so outrageous, because most of what I know from a classified setting. Unlike Senator Schumer, I've not seen the video yet. I will see it tomorrow as a member of the Armed Services Committee, but Secretary Hegseth, as Senator Schumer said, is not even committed to let all senators see it, much less the American public. They've shown part of the video to the American public. They've shown it on the president's social media account. They've put it up essentially as television advertising, thus completely destroying any argument that it reveals, methods of intelligence gathering, but they're afraid to show they're hiding the full video for the reason that the leader said, that they're ashamed of it. Tell me another war in the history of the United States that we're 100 days into it, 90 have been killed in more than 24 operations, and yet neither the House nor the Senate has held a single public hearing in the armed services or foreign relations or intel committees about the war. It's a war that's being conducted on presidential say-so, behind closed doors, without public briefings, and without legal authorization. The time for that is drawing to an end. The leader is putting on pressure, and we are as well. We're going to get the facts before the American public. And the last thing I'll say is this. The U.S. is the leader in human rights and rule of law. And so the actions we take and the claims of legal justification we make are the standard that other nations follow. Imagine our colleague, John McCain, shot down in Vietnam. Would it have been lawful for the Vietnamese to assassinate him as he clung to that craft in the middle of a lake in the city of Hanoi? Even the Vietnamese arrested him and imprisoned him. And I bet during those years of imprisonment, John McCain probably wished he was dead a few times, but thank God he lived. He lived because he became a great American hero, a great senator, a figure of hope to the whole world for his advocacy for human rights. How about the next time the Houthis are firing at American sailors who are bombing Houthi positions in the Red Sea? Should a Houthi missile or drone strike a ship? Should American sailors be clinging to shipwreck? We've just sent the message to the world that it's okay to slaughter shipwreck survivors in complete contravention of the U.S. Defense Manual and the International Law of War. Is this what we want to be known for? Giving a green light to overturning decades of human rights precedent, decades of laws of war precedent. That's what this administration is now pushing America to be known for. It's time we get this out of the skiff. It's time that you be able to see the evidence and the American public be able to see it, and we'll make sure that happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Good job. He's been a great advocate for this for a while. No, right here.
Thank you so much. With the ACA subsidies set to lapse, do you see a path forward, as Leader Thune just put it, in terms of more Democrats getting on board with a bipartisan deal, or do you think it's too late?
Look, after January 1st, the toothpaste is out of the tube. Millions of people will have lost their health care. Many more will have changed their policies and signed policies. And so the bottom line is we always want to work with people who will lower health care costs. But if the Republicans want to do something, they have till January 1st to pass the one bill that can get it done, our bill. And of course, they still haven't resolved any of their issues on the Hyde issue, on Hyde as well. So this is on the Republicans. Yes.
Given what Hegseth said today, are Democrats going to push to add language to the defense appropriations bill or the minibus to require the release of this full video from the September 2nd strike, or will you push other language to limit the hostilities in the Caribbean Sea against Venezuela?
Look, the bottom line is, and I'll call on Tim on the second question on the War Powers Act, but on the first, we do have a lot of Republican support. Both Wicker and Jack Reed on the committee have been pushing hard to get the full video, the unedited video released to members, and many of us feel it should be released to the public under the proper circumstances. So we're going to keep pushing, and there is public pressure on that. Okay, yes.
Support a deal with a 2-year extension with reforms sometime in January, let's say. It's clear it's not going to happen now, but there is.
All right, as you see there, wanted to play out those moments as Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is answering reporter questions. But we do have to head out to this live event as it just got underway here.
Good stuff.
We had it up there in a watch box there on
Good
your
afternoon.
screen so you could let you know when it got started. But we're going to be listening into a statue dedication that's happening there with House Speaker Mike Johnson now speaking. This is all has to do with the Supreme Court decision that struck down racial segregation in public schools back in 1951. Let's listen.
Capitol, and I hope y'all got to experience a little bit of it and walk around today and see the tree out front and all the rest. Today, we are here to honor one of America's true trailblazers, a woman who embodied the essence of the American spirit in her fight for liberty and justice and equal treatment under the law, the indomitable Barbara Rose Johns. Thank you all for being part of this. I'm pleased to tell you I've had the privilege of doing a number of these statues and ceremonies. This is certainly one of the largest audiences we've had for any statue unveiling since I became Speaker, so thank you. So joining us today, I'm told there are over 200 members of the Johns family, so thanks to the family. Yeah. Of course, we are joined by Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia, along with 50, yes, Governor. We also have nearly 50 of Virginia's state officials with us, so thank you all for being here today as well. And of course, we're joined by a number of my distinguished colleagues here in Congress. Virginia's congressional delegation is very well represented. They're all down here, and so be sure to see them when the ceremony's over. I want to thank you all for your time and concerted efforts to make this special day possible. It takes a long time to get one of these done, and you all know it. I also want to extend a special welcome to today's musical guests, the Eastern Senior High School Choir. Amazing, amazing. We have a wonderful ceremony planned for you today, so please enjoy and help us celebrate the accomplishments of this true American hero. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the presentation of the colors by the United States Capitol Police Ceremonial Unit, the performance of our national anthem by Lieutenant Colonel D.C. Washington, United States Army, retired, and the retiring of the colors.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets rang glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the invocation delivered by Mr. L. Francis Skip Griffin.
This is a day the Lord has made. Let us pray. O God of our ancestors, God of my father and my mother, our God, my God, bestow upon us now your Holy Spirit in this special place on this most joyous of days. Be with us today in this great hall of heroic figures as we gather to celebrate and memorialize for posterity in the extraordinary and courageous life of the remarkable Barbara Rose Johns. We place a statue appropriately of here today where she will be among other pioneering Americans. O God of us all, as we reflect together in your presence, let us be reminded of the deeply prophetic spirit that moved in Barbara's soul and inspired her at the age of 16 to lead fellow Moton students to take one giant step to move this nation towards a more perfect union. As we dedicate this statue, we pray it will serve as a source of inspiration for future generations of all Americans. May Barbara's story awaken in us to be citizens alive with the spirit of liberty and justice and fairness for all. Oh, happy day. Oh, happy day. Oh, happy day. Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, Democratic Leader of the United States House of Representatives.
Speaker Johnson, Governor Youngkin, Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger. Speaker Don Scott, to the Virginia Congressional Delegation, Senator Warner, Representative Bobby Scott, Skip Griffin, to members of the Johns family, 200 members strong. It's like a Johns family reunion up in here. And all those in attendance, it's a high honor and a distinct privilege as we celebrate the statue unveiling of Barbara Rose Johns, a trailblazer, freedom fighter, and incredible champion for equality. She was born in New York City and spent her early childhood in the Big Apple. I had to get that in, y'all. Before moving with her family to Prince Edward County, where she attended the segregated Moton High School in Farmville, Virginia. At just 16 years old, this courageous student took a stand and rallied hundreds of her classmates to walk out and not return for 2 weeks to protest the inadequate and intolerable conditions that they endured at their school. At the time, Moton High School was badly overcrowded, shabby equipment, no gymnasium, no science labs, poor heating, and shaky ventilation. Eventually, an overflow space was constructed, but an overflow space consisting of 3 poorly made tar paper shacks. It was a separate and unequal, toxic educational environment. After bringing these poor conditions to the attention of a teacher, Barbara was dismissively told, "Why don't you do something about it?" And that's exactly what she did. In retelling the story, she recalled thinking to herself, "This is your moment. Seize it." Barbara Johns rose to the occasion.
The Weekend Act. He's described as about 5'8" tall with a stocky build. The suspected shooter is wearing a mask, as you can see there, but analysts say his body shape may and the way he
that was just released is an FBI effort that was to enhance the kind of softer lined, blurrier pictures by adding a little contrast, trying to bring up some detail to make him more recognizable, more likely to someone who knows him. But they've also used other techniques like photogrammetry, where you take that 2-dimensional image from the video, you measure his height against other things, where you can go and get the exact measurements to determine his height, approximate weight. They've been trying to give people that they're looking to hear from the tools to say, is the person I'm thinking of in the ballpark?
And give us a sense, you're so well connected, John, give us a sense of what you're hearing in terms of the challenges they face, because I don't mean to be facetious, because as we look at these videos and these photos, I mean, I can imagine people be screaming at TV. That could be anyone. It's so grainy, the quality of the photos. They're wearing a mask. The clothes could really be anyone. When they say stocky, it really could be, right? So speak to the challenges.
Well, the challenges are when you're trying to crowdsource something, you want to reach as many people as possible. But, you know, if you look at the Charlie Kirk assassination, who were the people who confronted the suspect and said, "Is that you?" There were two groups of people. One were his gaming buddies who said, you know, that looks a lot like you. And the other, more pointedly, was his parents, who then contacted law enforcement. In the Luigi Mangione case, his mother, who had reported him as a missing person, reported to the local police department where he was living, saying, "I think the guy in these pictures from the NYPD on the other side of the country may be my missing son," which turned out to be correct. That's the kind of break they're hoping for, but that's not all they're doing. This is the kind of thing that's crowdsourced and can bring in leads. But those leads are coming into a lead bucket that the Providence police are running with the FBI and other agencies. And, you know, you take those leads and you triage them. Does this have enough detail? Can we start on this one right away? Does it sound more likely than the three leads behind it? And then you take the most viable leads and you start sending people out. I can tell you right now, there are more than one leads that they are taking seriously, that they are working on while we're having this conversation. Based on my experience in these investigations, either as an FBI official or an NYPD person involved in similar cases, any one of those leads can look really good and then wash out a few hours later, or look like a long shot and then turn into the thing that solves the case. It is literally the rhythm and unpredictability of these things, which is why you have to look into every call, every tip that comes in.
Police are hoping that a series of snippets of video will lead them to the shooter who killed two students at Brown University. Authorities released the video clips of the man they believe is responsible for the weekend act. He's described as about 5'8" tall with a stocky build. The suspected shooter is wearing a mask, as you can see there, but analysts say his body shape may, and the way he walks, could lead to his identification. As authorities track the movements of the man, they say it appears he wandered around the neighborhood near Brown for several hours before the shooting. I want to bring in Chief and Law Enforcement Analyst John Miller for more. John, you and I were talking yesterday. I'm just seeing now the Providence Police have released a new photo of the Brown shooting person of interest. They say, mention an enhanced photo. I'm just going to ask my team to bring that up because that just came out in the last, 20 minutes or so. We're looking at this now. You and I were talking yesterday, John, about the importance of having these images, this new evidence. Now that we have these images in these video, what does that tell us? Because I heard one law enforcement official saying this could be game-changing.
Well, what these pictures have been doing is they have been driving leads since the second video came out, where you don't just see the person from behind, but you now see the person moving around from head to toe. That is the kind of thing that if you passed him in the street today, Isa, or I did, we wouldn't recognize him from this. But if you knew him, you were a coworker, a family member, you might. And we've seen that succeed in very similar circumstances in recent cases where there was Charlie Kirk or the United Healthcare CEO assassination. They're hoping for a break like that here. Now, this latest photo that was just released is an FBI effort that was to enhance the kind of softer lined, blurrier pictures by adding a little contrast, trying to bring up some detail to make him more recognizable, more likely to someone who knows him. But they've also used other techniques like photogrammetry, where you take that two-dimensional image from the video, you measure his height against other things, where you can go and get the exact measurements to determine his height, approximate weight. They've been trying to give people that they're looking to hear from the tools to say, is the person I'm thinking of in the ballpark?
And give us a sense, you're so well connected, John, give us a sense of what you're hearing in terms of the challenges they face, because I don't mean to be facetious, but as we look at these videos and these photos, I mean, I can imagine people will be screaming at TV. That could be anyone. It's so grainy, the quality of the photos. They're wearing a mask. The clothes could really be anyone. When they say stocky, it really could be, right? So speak to the challenges.
Well, the challenges are when you're trying to crowdsource something, you want to reach as many people as possible. But, you know, if you look at the Charlie Kirk assassination, who were the people who confronted the suspect and said, "Is that you?" There were two groups of people. One were his gaming buddies who said, "You know, that looks a lot like you." And the other, more pointedly, was his parents, who then...
Where global insights meet media moments that matter. Where precise placements meet proven performance. Meet MasterCard Commerce Media. Powered by insights from over 159 billion transactions a year and a reach of 500 million consumers, MasterCard...
NYPD on the other side of the country may be my missing son, which turned out to be correct. That's the kind of break they're hoping for, but that's not all they're doing. This is the kind of thing that's crowdsourced and can bring in leads. But those leads are coming into a lead bucket that the Providence Police are running with the FBI and other agencies. And, you know, you take those leads and you triage them. Does this have enough detail? Can we start on this one right away? Does it sound more likely than the 3 leads behind it? And then you take the most viable leads and you start sending people out. And I can tell you right now, there are more than 1 leads that they are taking seriously, that they are working on while we're having this conversation. Based on my experience in these investigations, either as an FBI official or an NYPD person involved in similar cases, any one of those leads can look really good and then wash out a few hours later, or look like a long shot and then turn into the thing that solves the case. It is literally the rhythm and unpredictability of these things, which is why you have to look into every call, every tip that comes in.
Police are hoping that a series of snippets of video will lead them to the shooter who killed 2 students at Brown University. Authorities released the video clips of the man they believe is responsible for the Weekend Act. He's described as about 5 foot 8 inches tall with a stocky build. The suspected shooter is wearing a mask, as you can see there, but analysts say his body shape may and the way he walks could lead to his identification. As authorities track the movements of the man, they say it appears he wandered around the neighborhood near Brown for several hours before the shooting. I want to bring in Chief and Law Enforcement Analyst John Miller for more. John, you and I were talking yesterday. I'm just seeing now that Providence Police have released a new photo of the Brown shooting person of interest. They say, mention an enhanced photo. I'm just going to ask my team to bring that up because that just came out in the last, 20 minutes or so. We're looking at this now. You and I were talking yesterday, John, about the importance of having these images, this new evidence. Now that we have these images in these videos, what does that tell us? Because I heard one law enforcement official saying this could be game-changing.
Well, what these pictures have been doing is they have been driving leads since the second video came out, where you don't just see the person from behind, but you now see the person moving around from head to toe. That is the kind of thing that if you passed him in the street today, Isa, or I did, we wouldn't recognize him from this. But if you knew him, you were a coworker, a family member, you might. And we've seen that succeed in very similar circumstances in recent cases where there was Charlie Kirk or the United Healthcare CEO assassination. They're hoping for a break like that here. Now, this latest photo that was just released is an FBI effort that was to enhance the kind of softer lined, blurrier pictures by adding a little contrast, trying to bring up some detail to make him more recognizable, more likely to someone who knows him. But they've also used other techniques like photogrammetry, where you take that 2-dimensional image from the video, you measure his height against other things, where you can go and get the exact measurements to determine his height, approximate weight. They've been trying to give people that they're looking to hear from the tools to say, is the person I'm thinking of in the ballpark?
And give us a sense, you're so well connected, John, give us a sense of what you're hearing in terms of the challenges they face, because I don't mean to be facetious, but as we look at these videos and these photos, I mean, I can imagine people will be screaming at TV. That could be anyone. It's so grainy, the quality of the photos. They're wearing a mask. The clothes could really be anyone. When they say stocky, it really could be, right? So speak to the challenges.
Well, the challenges are when you're trying to crowdsource something, you want to reach as many people as possible. But, you know, if you look at the Charlie Kirk assassination, who were the people who confronted the suspect and said, "Is that you?" There were two groups of people. One were his gaming buddies who said, you know, that looks a lot like you. And the other, more pointedly, was his parents, who then contacted law enforcement. In the Luigi Mangione case, his mother, who had reported him as a missing person, reported to the local police department where he was living, saying, "I think the guy in these pictures from the NYPD on the other side of the country may be my missing son," which turned out to be correct. That's the kind of break they're hoping for, but that's not all they're doing. This is the kind of thing that's crowdsourced and can bring in leads. But those leads are coming into a lead bucket that the Providence police are running with the FBI and other agencies. And, you know, you take those leads and you triage them. Does this have enough detail? Can we start on this one right away? Does it sound more likely than the three leads behind it? And then you take the most viable leads and you start sending people out. And I can tell you right now, there are more than one leads that they are taking seriously, that they are working on while we're having this conversation. Based on my experience in these investigations, either as an FBI official or an NYPD person involved in similar cases, any one of those leads can look really good and then wash out a few hours later, or look like a long shot and then turn into the thing that solves the case. It is literally the rhythm and unpredictability of these things, which is why you have to look into every call, every tip that comes in.
Police are hoping that a series of snippets of video will lead them to the shooter who killed two students at Brown University. Authorities released the video clips of the man they believe is responsible for the weekend act. He's described as about 5'8" tall with a stocky build. The suspected shooter is wearing a mask, as you can see there, but analysts say his body shape may and the way he walks could lead to his identification. As authorities track the movements of the man, they say it appears he wandered around the neighborhood near Brown for several hours before the shooting. I want to bring in Chief and Law Enforcement Analyst John Miller for more. John, you and I were talking yesterday. I'm just seeing now the Providence Police have released a new photo of the Brown shooting person of interest. They say, mention an enhanced photo. I'm just going to ask my team to bring that up because that just came out in the last, 20 minutes or so. We're looking at this now. You and I were talking yesterday, John, about the importance of having these images, this new evidence. Now that we have these images in these video, what does that tell us? Because I heard one law enforcement official saying this could be game-changing.
Well, what these pictures have been doing is they have been driving leads since the second video came out, where you don't just see the person from behind, but you now see the person moving around from head to toe. That is the kind of thing that if you passed him in the street today, Isa, or I did, we wouldn't recognize him from this. But if you knew him, you were a coworker, a family member, you might. And there are circumstances in recent cases where there was Charlie Kirk or the United Healthcare CEO assassination. They're hoping for a break like that here. Now, this latest photo that was just released is an FBI effort that was to enhance the kind of softer lined, blurrier pictures by adding a little contrast, trying to bring up some detail to make him more recognizable, more likely to someone who knows him. But they've also used other techniques like photogrammetry, where you take that two-dimensional image from the video, you measure his height against other things, where you can go and get the exact measurements to determine his height, approximate weight. They've been trying to give people that they're looking to hear from the tools to say, is the person I'm thinking of in the ballpark?
And give us a sense, you're so well connected, John, give us a sense of what you're hearing in terms of the challenges they face, because I don't mean to be facetious, because as we look at these videos and these photos, I mean, I can imagine people will be screaming at TV. That could be anyone. It's so grainy, the quality of the photos. They're wearing a mask. The clothes could really be anyone. When they say stocky, it really could be, right? So speak to the challenges.
Well, the challenges are when you're trying to crowdsource something, you want to reach as many people as possible. But, you know, if you look at the Charlie Kirk assassination, who were the people who confronted the suspect and said, "Is that you?" There were two groups of people. One were his gaming buddies who said, "You know, that looks a lot like you." And the other, more pointedly, was his parents, who then contacted law enforcement. In the Luigi Mangione case, his mother, who had reported him as a missing person, reported to the local police department where he was living, saying, "I think the guy in these pictures from the NYPD on the other side of the country may be my missing son," which turned out to be correct. That's the kind of break they're hoping for, but that's not all they're doing. This is the kind of thing that's crowdsourced and can bring in leads. But those leads are coming into a lead bucket that the Providence police are running with the FBI and other agencies. And, you know, you take those leads and you triage them. Does this have enough detail? Can we start on this one right away? Does it sound more likely than the three leads behind it? And then you take the most viable leads and you start sending people out. And I can tell you right now, there are more than one leads that they are taking seriously, that they are working on while we're having this conversation. Based on my experience in these investigations, either as an FBI official or an NYPD person involved in similar cases, any one of those leads can look really good and then wash out a few hours later, or look like a long shot and then turn into the thing that solves the case. It is literally the rhythm and unpredictability of these things, which is why you have to look into every call, every tip that comes in.
Police are hoping that a series of snippets of video will lead them to the shooter who killed two students at Brown University. Authorities released the video clips of the man they believe is responsible for the weekend act. He's described as about 5'8" tall with a stocky build. The suspected shooter is wearing a mask, as you can see there, but analysts say his body shape may and the way he walks could lead to his identification. As authorities track the movements of the man, they say it appears he wandered around the neighborhood near Brown for several hours before the shooting. I want to bring in Chief and Law Enforcement Analyst John Miller for more. John, you and I were talking yesterday. I'm just seeing now that Providence Police have released a new photo of the Brown shooting person of interest. They say, mention an enhanced photo. I'm just going to ask my team to bring that up because that just came out in the last, 20 minutes or so. We're looking at this now. You and I were talking yesterday, John, about the importance of having these images, this new evidence. Now that we have these images in these videos, what does that tell us? Because I heard one law enforcement official saying this could be game-changing.
Well, what these pictures have been that if you passed him in the street today, Isa, or I did, we wouldn't recognize him from this. But if you knew him, you were a coworker, a family member, you might. And we've seen that succeed in very similar circumstances in recent cases where there was Charlie Kirk or the United Healthcare CEO assassination. They're hoping for a break like that here. Now, this latest photo that was just released is an FBI effort that was to enhance the kind of softer lined, blurrier pictures by adding a little contrast, trying to bring up some detail to make him more recognizable, more likely to someone who knows him. But they've also used other techniques like photogrammetry, where you take that two-dimensional image from the video, you measure his height against other things, where you can go and get the exact measurements to determine his height, approximate weight. They've been trying to give people that they're looking to hear from the tools to say, is the person I'm thinking of in the ballpark?
And give us a sense, you're so well connected, John, give us a sense of what you're hearing in terms of the challenges they face, because I don't mean to be facetious, because as we look at these videos and these photos, I can imagine people will be screaming at TV. That could be anyone. It's so grainy, the quality of the photos. They're wearing a mask. The clothes could really be anyone. When they say stocky, it really could be, right? So speak to the challenges.
Well, the challenges are when you're trying to crowdsource something, you want to reach as many people as possible. But, you know, if you look at the Charlie Kirk assassination, who were the people who confronted the suspect and said, "Is that you?" There were two groups of people. One were his gaming buddies who said, you know, that looks a lot like you. And the other, more pointedly, was his parents, who then contacted law enforcement. In the Luigi Mangione case, his mother, who had reported him as a missing person, reported to the local police department where he was living, saying, "I think the guy in these pictures from the NYPD on the other side of the country may be my missing son," which turned out to be correct. That's the kind of break they're hoping for, but that's not all they're doing. This is the kind of thing that's crowdsourced and can bring in leads. But those leads are coming into a lead bucket that the Providence police are running with the FBI and other agencies. And, you know, you take those leads and you triage them. Does this have enough detail? Can we start on this one right away? Does it sound more likely than the three leads behind it? And then you take the most viable leads and you start sending people out. And I can tell you right now, there are more than one leads that they are taking seriously, that they are working on while we're having this conversation. Based on my experience in these investigations, either as an FBI official or an NYPD person involved in similar cases, any one of those leads can look really good and then wash out a few hours later, or look like a long shot and then turn into the thing that solves the case. It is literally the rhythm and unpredictability of these things, which is why you have to look into every call, every tip that comes in.
Police are hoping that a series of snippets of video will lead them to the shooter who killed two students at Brown University. Authorities released the video clips of the man they believe is responsible for the Weekend act. He's described as about 5'8" tall with a stocky build. The suspected shooter is wearing a mask, as you can see there, but analysts say his body shape may and the way he walks could lead to his identification. As authorities track the movements of the man, they say it appears he wandered around the neighborhood near Brown for several hours before the shooting. I want to bring in Chief and Law Enforcement Analyst John Miller for more. John, you and I were talking yesterday. I'm just seeing now that Providence Police have released a new photo of the Brown shooting person of interest. They say, mention an enhanced photo. I'm just going to ask my team to bring that up because that just came out in the last, 20 minutes or so. We're looking at this now. You and I were talking yesterday, John, about the importance of having these images, this new evidence. Now that we have these images in these video, what does that tell us? Because I heard one law enforcement official saying this could be game-changing.
Well, what these pictures have been doing is they have been driving leads since the second video came out, where you don't just see the person from behind, but you now see the person moving around from head to toe. That is the kind of thing that if you passed him in the street today, Isa, or I did, we wouldn't recognize him from this. But if you knew him, you were a coworker, a family member, you might. And we've seen that succeed in very similar circumstances in recent cases where there was Charlie Kirk or the United Healthcare CEO assassination. They're hoping for a break like that here. Now, this latest photo that was just released is an FBI effort that was to enhance the kind of softer lined, blurrier pictures by adding a little contrast, trying to bring up some detail to make him more recognizable, more likely to someone who knows him. But they've also used other techniques like photogrammetry, where you take that two-dimensional image from the video, you measure his height against other things, where you can go and get the exact measurements to determine his height, approximate weight. They've been trying to give people that they're looking to hear from the tools to say, is the person I'm thinking of in the ballpark?
And give us a sense, you're so well connected, John, give us a sense of what you're hearing in terms of the challenges they face. Because I don't mean to be facetious, but as we look at these videos and these photos, I can imagine people will be screaming at TV. That could be anyone. It's so grainy, the quality of the photos. They're wearing a mask. The clothes could really be anyone. When they say stocky, it really could be, right? So speak to the challenges.
Well, the challenges are when you're trying to crowdsource something, you want to reach as many people as possible. But, you know, if you look at the Charlie Kirk assassination, who were the people who confronted the suspect and said, "Is that you?" There were two groups of people. One were his gaming buddies who said, "You know, that looks a lot like you." And the other, more pointedly, was his parents, who then contacted law enforcement. In the Luigi Mangione case, his mother, who had reported him as a missing person, reported to the local police department where he was living, saying, "I think the guy in these pictures from the NYPD on the other side of the country may be my missing son," which turned out to be correct. That's the kind of break they're hoping for, but that's not all they're doing. This is the kind of thing that's crowdsourced and can bring in leads. But those leads are coming into a lead bucket that the Providence police are running with the FBI and other agencies. And, you know, you take those leads and you triage them. Does this have enough detail? Can we start on this one right away? Does it sound more likely than the three leads behind it? And then you take the most viable leads and you start sending people out. And I can tell you right now, there are more than one leads that they are taking seriously, that they are working on while we're having this conversation. Based on my experience in these investigations, either as an FBI official or an NYPD person involved in similar cases, any one of those leads can look really good and then wash out a few hours later, or look like a long shot and then turn into the thing that solves the case. It is literally the rhythm and unpredictability of these things, which is why you have to look into every call, every tip that comes in.
Police are hoping that a series of snippets of video will lead them to the shooter who killed two students at Brown University. Authorities released the video clips of the man they believe is responsible for the Weekend act. He's described as about 5'8" tall with a stocky build. The suspected shooter is wearing a mask, as you can see there, but analysts say his body shape may and the way he walks could lead to his identification. As authorities track the movements of the man, they say it appears he wandered around the neighborhood near Brown for several hours before the shooting. I want to bring in Chief and Law Enforcement Analyst John Miller for more. John, you and I were talking yesterday. I'm just seeing now the Providence Police have released a new photo of the Brown shooting person of interest. They say, mention an enhanced photo. I'm just going to ask my team to bring that up because that just came out in the last, 20 minutes or so. We're looking at this now. You and I were talking yesterday, John, about the importance of having these images, this new evidence. Now that we have these images in these videos, what does that tell us? Because I heard one law enforcement official saying this could be game-changing.
Well, what these pictures have been doing is they have been driving leads since the second video came out, where you don't just see the person from behind, but you now see the person moving around from head to toe. That is the kind of thing that if you passed him in the street today, Isa, or I did, we wouldn't recognize him from this. But if you knew him, you were a coworker, a family member, you might. And we've seen that succeed in very similar circumstances in recent cases where there was Charlie Kirk or the United Healthcare CEO assassination. They're hoping for a break like that here. Now, this latest photo that was just released is an FBI effort that was to enhance the kind of softer lined, blurrier pictures by adding a little contrast, trying to bring up some detail to make him more recognizable, more likely to someone who knows him. But they've also used other techniques like photogrammetry, where you take that two-dimensional image from the video, you measure his height against other things, where you can go and get the exact measurements to determine his height, approximate weight. They've been trying to give people that they're looking to hear from the tools to say, is the person I'm thinking of in the ballpark?
And give us a sense, you're so well connected, John, give us a sense of what you're hearing in terms of the challenges they face, because I don't mean to be facetious, because as we look at these videos and these photos, I mean, I can imagine people will be screaming at TV, that could be anyone. It's so grainy, the quality of the photos. They're wearing a mask. The clothes could really be anyone. When they say stocky, it really could be, right? So speak to the challenges.
Well, the challenges are when you're trying to crowdsource something, you want to reach as many people as possible. But, if you look at the Charlie Kirk assassination, who were the people who confronted the suspect and said, is that you? There were two groups of people. One were his gaming buddies who said, that looks a lot like you. And the other, more pointedly, was his parents, who then contacted law enforcement. In the Luigi Mangione case, his mother, who had reported him as a missing person, reported to the local police department where he was living, saying, I think the guy in these pictures from the NYPD on the other side of the country may be my missing son, which turned out to be correct. That's the kind of break they're hoping for, but that's not all they're doing. This is the kind of thing that's crowdsourced and can bring in leads. But those leads are coming into a lead bucket that the Providence police are running with the FBI and other agencies. And, you know, you take those leads and you triage them. Does this have enough detail? Can we start on this one right away? Does it sound more likely than the 3 leads behind it? And then you take the most viable leads and you start sending people out. And I can tell you right now, there are more than 1 leads that they are taking seriously, that they are working on while we're having this conversation. Based on my experience in these investigations, either as an FBI official or an NYPD person involved in similar cases, any one of those leads can look really good and then wash out a few hours later, or look like a long shot and then turn into the thing that solves the case. It is literally the rhythm and unpredictability of these things, which is why you have to look into every call, every tip that comes in.
Police are hoping that a series of snippets of video will lead them to the shooter who killed 2 students at Brown University. Authorities released the video clips of the man they believe is responsible for the weekend act. He's described as about 5'8" tall with a stocky build. The suspected shooter is wearing a mask, as you can see there, but analysts say his body shape may and the way he walks could lead to his identification. As authorities track the movements of the man, they say it appears he wandered around the neighborhood near Brown for several hours before the shooting. I want to bring in Chief and Law Enforcement Analyst John Miller for more. John, you and I were talking yesterday. I'm just seeing now that Providence Police have released a new photo of the Brown shooting person of interest. They say, mention an enhanced photo. I'm just going to ask my team to bring that up because that just came out in the last, 20 minutes or so. We're looking at this now. You and I were talking yesterday, John, about the importance of having these images, this new evidence. Now that we have these images in these videos, what does that tell us? Because I heard one law enforcement official saying this could be game-changing.
Well, what these pictures have been doing is they have been driving leads since the second video came out, where you don't just see the person from behind, but you now see the person moving around from head to toe. That is the kind of thing that if you passed him in the street today, Isa, or I did, we wouldn't recognize him from this. But if you knew him, you were a coworker, a family member, you might. And we've seen that succeed in very similar circumstances in recent cases where there was Charlie Kirk or the United Healthcare CEO assassination. They're hoping for a break like that here. Now, this latest photo that was just released is an FBI effort that was to enhance the kind of softer lined, blurrier pictures by adding a little contrast, trying to bring up some detail to make him more recognizable, more likely to someone who knows him. But they've also used other techniques like photogrammetry, where you
And give us a sense, you're so well connected, John, give us a sense of what you're hearing in terms of the challenges they face, because I don't mean to be facetious, because as we look at these videos and these photos, I mean, I can imagine people be screaming at TV. That could be anyone. It's so grainy, the quality of the photos. They're wearing a mask. The clothes could really be anyone. When they say stocky, it really could be, right? So speak to the challenges.
Well, the challenges are when you're trying to crowdsource something, you want to reach as many people as possible. But, you know, if you look at the Charlie Kirk assassination, who were the people who confronted the suspect and said, "Is that you?" There were 2 groups of people. One were his gaming buddies who said, "You know, that looks a lot like you." And the other, more pointedly, was his parents, who then contacted law enforcement. In the Luigi Mangione case, his mother, who had reported him as a missing person, reported to the local police department where he was living, saying, "I think the guy in these pictures from the NYPD on the other side of the country may be my missing son," which turned out to be correct. That's the kind of break they're hoping for, but that's not all they're doing. This is the kind of thing that's crowdsourced and can bring in leads. But those leads are coming into a lead bucket that the Providence police are running with the FBI and other agencies. And, you know, you take those leads and you triage them. Does this have enough detail? Can we start on this one right away? Does it sound more likely than the 3 leads behind it? And then you take the most viable leads and you start sending people out. And I can tell you right now, there are more than 1 leads that they are taking seriously, that they are working on while we're having this conversation. Based on my experience in these investigations, either as an FBI official or an NYPD person involved in similar cases, any one of those leads can look really good and then wash out a few hours later, or look like a long shot and then turn into the thing that solves the case. It is literally the rhythm and unpredictability of these things, which is why you have to look into every call, every tip that comes in.
Police are hoping that a series of snippets of video will lead them to the shooter who killed 2 students at Brown University. Authorities released the video clips of the man they believe is responsible for the weekend act. He's described as about 5 foot 8 inches tall with a stocky build. The suspected shooter is wearing a mask, as you can see there, but analysts say his body shape may and the way he walks could lead to his identification. As authorities track the movements of the man, they say it appears he wandered around the neighborhood near Brown for several hours before the shooting. I want to bring in Chief and Law Enforcement Analyst John Miller for more. John, you and I were talking yesterday. I'm just seeing now that Providence Police have released a new photo of the Brown shooting person of interest. They say, mention an enhanced photo. I'm just going to ask my team to bring that up because that just came out in the last, 20 minutes or so. We're looking at this now. You and I were talking yesterday, John, about the importance of having these images, this new evidence. Now that we have these images in these video, what does that tell us? Because I heard one law enforcement official saying this could be game-changing.
Well, what these pictures have been doing is they have been driving leads since the second video came out, where you don't just see the person from behind, but you now see the person moving around from head to toe. That is the kind of thing that if you passed him in the street today, Isa, or I did, we wouldn't recognize him from this. But if you knew him, you were a coworker, a family member, you might. And we've seen that succeed in very similar circumstances in recent cases where there was Charlie Kirk or the United Healthcare CEO assassination. They're hoping for a break like that here. Now, this latest photo that was just released is an FBI effort that was to enhance the kind of softer lined, blurrier pictures by adding a little contrast, trying to bring up some detail to make him more recognizable, more likely to someone who knows him. But they've also used other techniques like photogrammetry, where you take that 2-dimensional image from the video, you measure his height against other things, where you can go and get the exact measurements to determine his height, approximate weight. They've been trying to give people that they're looking to hear from the tools to say, is the person I'm thinking of in the ballpark?
And give us a sense, you're so well connected, John, give us a sense of what you're hearing in terms of the challenges they face, because I don't mean to be facetious, but as we look at these videos and these photos, I mean, I can imagine people will be screaming at TV. That could be anyone. It's so grainy, the quality of the photos. They're wearing a mask. The clothes could really be anyone. When they say stocky, it really could be, right? So speak to the challenges.
Well, the challenges are when you're trying to crowdsource something, you want to reach as many people as possible. But, if you look at the Charlie Kirk assassination, who were the people who confronted the suspect and said, is that you? There were 2 groups of people. One were his gaming buddies who said, that looks a lot like you. And the other, more pointedly, was his parents, who then contacted law enforcement. In the Luigi Mangione case, his mother, who had reported him as a missing person, reported to the local police department where he was living, saying, I think the guy in these pictures from the NYPD on the other side of the country may be my missing son, which turned out to be correct. That's the kind of break they're hoping for, but that's not all they're doing. This is the kind of thing that's crowdsourced and can bring in leads. But those leads are coming into a lead bucket that the Providence Police are running with the FBI and other agencies. And, you take those leads and you triage them. Does this have enough detail? Can we start on this one right away? Does it sound more likely than the 3 leads behind it? And then you take the most viable leads and you start sending people out. And I can tell you right now, there are more than 1 leads that they are taking seriously, that they are working on while we're having this conversation. Based on my experience in these investigations, either as an FBI official or an NYPD person involved in similar cases, any one of those leads can look really good and then wash out a few hours later, or look like a long shot and then turn into the thing that solves the case. It is literally the rhythm and unpredictability of these things, which is why you have to look into every call, every tip that comes in.
Police are hoping that a series of snippets of video will lead them to the shooter who killed 2 students at Brown University. Authorities released the video clips of the man they believe is responsible for the Weekend Act. He's described as about 5 foot 8 inches tall with a stocky build. The suspected shooter is wearing a mask, as you can see there, but analysts say his body shape may and the way he walks could lead to his identification. As authorities track the movements of the man, they say it appears he wandered around the neighborhood near Brown for several hours before the shooting. I want to bring in Chief and Law Enforcement Analyst John Miller for more. John, you and I were talking yesterday. I'm just seeing now that Providence Police have released a new photo of the Brown shooting person of interest. They say, mention an enhanced photo. I'm just going to ask my team to bring that up because that just came out in the last, 20 minutes or so. We're looking at this now. You and I were talking yesterday, John, about the importance of having these images, this new evidence. Now that we have these images in these videos, what does that tell us? Because I heard one law enforcement official saying this could be game-changing.
Well, what these pictures have been doing is they have been driving leads since the second video came out, where you don't just see the person from behind, but you now see the person moving around from head to toe. That is the kind of thing that if you passed him in the street today, Isa, or I did, we wouldn't recognize him from this. But if you knew him, you were a coworker, a family member, you might. And we've seen that succeed in very similar circumstances in recent cases where there was Charlie Kirk or the United Healthcare CEO assassination. They're hoping for a break like that here. Now, this latest photo that was just released is an FBI effort that was to enhance the kind of softer lined, blurrier pictures by adding a little contrast, trying to bring up some detail to make him more recognizable, more likely to someone who knows him. But they've also used other techniques like photogrammetry, where you take that 2-dimensional image from the video, you measure his height against other things, where you can go and get the exact measurements to determine his height, approximate weight. They've been trying to give people that they're looking to hear from the tools to say, is the person I'm thinking of in the ballpark?
And give us a sense, you're so well connected, John, give us a sense of what you're hearing in terms of the challenges they face, because I don't mean to be facetious, because as we look at these videos and these photos, I can imagine people be screaming at TV. That could be anyone. It's so grainy, the quality of the photos. They're wearing a mask. The clothes could really be anyone. When they say stocky, it really could be, right? So speak to the challenges.
Well, the challenges are when you're trying to crowdsource something, you want to reach as many people as possible. But, if you look at the Charlie Kirk assassination, who were the people who confronted the suspect and said, is that you? There were 2 groups of people. One were his gaming buddies who said, that looks a lot like you. And the other, more pointedly, was his parents, who then contacted law enforcement. In the Luigi Mangione case, his mother, who had reported him as a missing person, reported to the local police department where he was living, saying, I think the guy in these pictures from the NYPD on the other side of the country may be my missing son, which turned out to be correct. That's the kind of break they're hoping for, but that's not all they're doing. This is the kind of thing that's crowdsourced and can bring in leads. But those leads are coming into a lead bucket that the Providence police are running with the FBI and other agencies. And, you know, you take those leads and you triage them. Does this have enough detail? Can we start on this one right away? Does it sound more likely than the 3 leads behind it? And then you take the most viable leads and you start sending people out. And I can tell you right now, there are more than 1 leads that they are taking seriously, that they are working on while we're having this conversation. Based on my experience in these investigations, either as an FBI official or an NYPD person involved in similar cases, any one of those leads can look really good and then wash out a few hours later, or look like a long shot and then turn into the thing that solves the case. It is literally the rhythm and unpredictability of these things, which is why you have to look into every call, every tip that comes in.
Police are hoping that a series of snippets of video will lead them to the shooter who killed 2 students at Brown University. Authorities released the video clips of the man they believe is responsible for the Weekend Act. He's described as about 5 foot 8 inches tall with a stocky build. The suspected shooter is wearing a mask, as you can see there, but analysts say his body shape may and the way he walks could lead to his identification. As authorities track the movements of the man, they say it appears he wandered around the neighborhood near Brown for several hours before the shooting. I want to bring in Chief and Law Enforcement Analyst John Miller for more. John, you and I were talking yesterday. I'm just seeing now that Providence Police have released a new photo of the Brown shooting person of interest. They say, mention an enhanced photo. I'm just going to ask my team to bring that up because that just came out in the last, 20 minutes or so. We're looking at this now. You and I were talking yesterday, John, about the importance of having these images, this new evidence. Now that we have these images in these videos, what does that tell us? Because I heard one law enforcement official saying this could be game-changing.
Well, what these pictures have been doing is they have been driving leads since the second video came out, where you don't just see the person from behind, but you now see the person moving around from head to toe. That is the kind of thing that if you passed him in the street today, Isa, or I did, we wouldn't recognize him from this. But if you knew him, you were a coworker, a family member, you might. And we've seen that succeed in very similar circumstances in recent cases where there was Charlie Kirk or the United Healthcare CEO assassination. They're hoping for a break like that here. Now, this latest photo that was just released is an FBI effort that was to enhance the kind of softer lined, blurrier pictures by adding a little contrast, trying to bring up some detail to make him more recognizable, more likely to someone who knows him. But they've also used other techniques like photogrammetry, where you take that 2-dimensional image from the video, you measure his height against other things, where you can go and get the exact measurements to determine his height, approximate weight. They've been trying to give people that they're looking to hear from the tools to say, is the person I'm thinking of in the ballpark?
And give us a sense, you're so well connected, John, give us a sense of what you're hearing in terms of the challenges they face, because I don't mean to be facetious, because as we look at these videos and these photos, I mean, I can imagine people be screaming at TV. That could be anyone. It's so grainy, the quality of the photos. They're wearing a mask. The clothes could really be anyone. When they say stocky, it really could be, right? So speak to the challenges.
Well, the challenges are when you're trying to crowdsource something, you want to reach as many people as possible. But, if you look at the Charlie Kirk assassination.
Yeah. I'm going to need you to go ahead and sneeze on some people. Yeah. If you could just get a bunch of folks infected, that'd be great.
Hello, people. Welcome aboard Contagion Air. Prior to takeoff, please take a moment to sneeze on the person next to you. Your disease is now free to move about the cabin.
Son, which turned out to be correct. That's the kind of break they're hoping for, but that's not all they're doing. This is the kind of thing that's crowdsourced and can bring in leads. But those leads are coming into a lead bucket that the Providence police are running with the FBI and other agencies. And, you take those leads and you triage them. Does this have enough detail? Can we start on this one right away? Does it sound more likely than the 3 leads behind it? And then you take the most viable leads and you start sending people out. And I can tell you right now, there are more than 1 leads that they are taking seriously, that they are working on while we're having this conversation. Based on my experience in these investigations, either as an FBI official or an NYPD person involved in similar cases, any one of those leads can look really good and then wash out a few hours later, or look like a long shot and then turn into the thing that solves the case. It is literally the rhythm and unpredictability of these things, which is why you have to look into every call, every tip that comes in.
Police are hoping that a series of snippets of video will lead them to the shooter who killed 2 students at Brown University. Authorities released the video clips of the man they believe is responsible for the Weekend Act. He's described as about 5'8" tall with a stocky build. The suspected shooter is wearing a mask, as you can see there, but analysts say his body shape and the way he walks could lead to his identification. As authorities track the movements of the man, they say it appears he wandered around the neighborhood near Brown for several hours before the shooting. I want to bring in Chief and Law Enforcement Analyst John Miller for more. John, you and I were talking yesterday. I'm just seeing now that Providence Police have released a new photo of the Brown shooting person of interest. They say, mention an enhanced photo. I'm just going to ask my team to bring that up because that just came out in the last, 20 minutes or so. We're looking at this now. You and I were talking yesterday, John, about the importance of having these images, this new evidence. Now that we have these images in these videos, what does that tell us? Because I heard one law enforcement official saying this could be game-changing.
Well, what these pictures have been doing is they have been driving leads since the second video came out, where you don't just see the person from behind, but you now see the person moving around from head to toe. That is the kind of thing that if you passed him in the street today, Isa, or I did, we wouldn't recognize him from this. But if you knew him, you were a coworker, a family member, you might. And we've seen that succeed in very similar circumstances in recent cases where there was Charlie Kirk or the United Healthcare CEO assassination. They're hoping for a break like that here. Now, this latest photo that was just released is an FBI effort that was to enhance the kind of softer lined, blurrier pictures by adding a little contrast, trying to bring up some detail to make him more recognizable, more likely to someone who knows him. But they've also used other techniques like photogrammetry, where you take that 2-dimensional image from the video, you measure his height against other things, where you can go and get the exact measurements to determine his height, approximate weight. They've been trying to give people that they're looking to hear from the tools to say, is the person I'm thinking of in the ballpark?
And give us a sense, you're so well connected, John, give us a sense of what you're hearing in terms of the challenges they face, because I don't mean to be facetious, because as we look at these videos and these photos, I can imagine people will be screaming at TV, that could be anyone. It's so grainy, the quality of the photos. They're wearing a mask. The clothes could really be anyone. When they say stocky, it really could be, right? So speak to the challenges.
Well, the challenges are when you're trying to crowdsource something, you want to reach as many people as possible. But, if you look at the Charlie Kirk assassination, who were the people who confronted the suspect and said, is that you? There were 2 groups of people. One were his gaming buddies who said, that looks a lot like you. And the other, more pointedly, was his parents, who then contacted law enforcement. In the Luigi Mangione case, his mother, who had reported him as a missing person, reported to the local police department where he was living, saying, I think the guy in these pictures from the NYPD on the other side of the country may be my missing son, which turned out to be correct. That's the kind of break they're hoping for, but that's not all they're doing. This is the kind of thing that's crowdsourced and can bring in leads. But those leads are coming into a lead bucket that the Providence police are running with the FBI and other agencies. And, you take those leads and you triage them. Does this have enough detail? Can we start on this one right away? Does it sound more likely than the 3 leads behind it? And then you take the most viable leads and you start sending people out. And I can tell you right now,